The Carl Nelson Show.
You're rocking with the most awesomest. All right, let's go. Keep rocking. Keep rocking.
And good morning, family, and thanks for starting your day with us again. Later, we will reminisce on the 59th anniversary of Malcolm X's assassination. Journalist A. Peter Bailey, who was at the Audubon Ballroom and one of the last persons to speak with Brother Malcolm, will lead the discussion. Before we hear from Brother Peter, though, Black Women for Positive Changes, Dr. Stephanie Myers will update us on the group's new nonviolence techniques. Before Dr. Myers, Pan-African educator Dr. Chike Akua will check in. But to get us started, Dr. Akmul Muwwakil is here. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning. How are you, sir? And thank you for having me on.
I'm excellent. How are you doing?
Listen, I'm as good as God allow me to be at the moment.
All right. I
can't
love
do no
that.
better than that.
That's right. We all need to recognize that. But let me ask you this, because you know what's been going on, and you've seen it. People are trying to lose weight, and they're trying to take that jab to lose weight. Can you help those folks out? Who is there another way that you can lose weight without using it chemically?
Sure. I mean, when we start talking about weight, we're actually talking about malnutrition, and we're talking about malnutrition from a standpoint of not the children that we see that are underweight, but the people that we see that are very much overweight. And that's because of the factor that their body is not receiving nutrients from the foods that they're eating. So because of that, now what's happening is that now a tissue in the body, which is called adipose, is actually tissue that is starting to grow. And as that tissue grows and spreads, the body then begins to take on more weight. So when we start looking at it, and to answer your question, yes, there are other ways to reduce and eliminate weight. It's basically about consistency and the foods that you eat.
All right, you teach a class, and its title, it's not weight, it's waste, healthy lifestyle weight. Can you explain that class that you have? Folks who want to lose weight.
So the class I have is a class that gets into using natural methods of having an understanding of one, what foods are, because as humans we don't understand what food is. We just eat it. You know, and a lot of us are addicted to things like sweets and salt and that kind of thing, and that's because of the fact that the body is not taking in the nutrients that it needs. So what it's not waste, it's waste is it gets into the teaching a person about healthy lifestyles. For instance, we'll talk about foods. We'll talk about the combination of foods. We'll talk about eating foods in season. The first class, for instance, breaks down the digestive tract so that a lay person can understand what happens when you put something in your mouth. You know, we look at the physicality of the digestion, and digestion actually begins in your mind. The physicality of it happens in your body when you start chewing. And, you know, we're a gulping society, so we talk about that. Just think about it this way. If I had a lemon in my hand and I started squeezing the lemon and you saw the juices from the lemon come out on my hand, what will happen is that your mouth will start to salivate. So we have to understand that's you go by one of them greasy spoons and you smell that grease, and that's basically what people are smelling. What will happen is that olfactory nerve kicks in, and they say, well, let me go get something to eat. Let me eat some of that. So our program teaches people that that's a falsehood as to how to eat. The other part of that is when we talk about foods, you know, anybody that is over the age of 50, basically, 70, 80, growing up, we ate foods in season. We didn't eat and I'm in my 70s. I did not eat foods that were grown in other places. We eat mostly foods that were grown in season and grown closely in our area. And that's what kind of kept us healthy. Our ancestors who were enslaved, the brutality of slavery was their biggest attack on them. They ate foods and seasons, and nutritionally, they were healthy. Today, we don't get nutrients. We get plastic. We get foods that are adulterated, processed foods. So we talk about in the class. We talk about why not to eat processed foods, and then we talk about food supplements. Supplementation is very important. For instance, if the people listening to this call, this afternoon, this morning, they should go out and get them some digestive enzymes, because that's one of the first things I talk about is digestive enzymes and probiotics. Because the digestive enzymes, what that does is digestive enzymes begin to break down your food in its places in the body where it's supposed to break down. Starch in the mouth, proteins in the stomach. Small intestine has to do with fats or lipids, as they're called, and sugars. So all of that's broken down so that the body's bowels, so that the body can extract nutrients from the foods that you're eating and get rid of the waste byproducts in a timely manner. What we see in people who are overweight or obese, what we see there is we see the fact that their body is not eliminating the waste. So the foods that they're eating are too concentrated, and they're not getting nutrients from it. So
all right, let's back up a bit. Let's back up a bit, Dr. A. When the food, you talked about chewing, and we've all, as children, we're being taught you got to chew your food 22 times, and I think about it every time I'm eating. Am I chewing it 22 times? Why is it you should chew your food a lot? Because some folks, the food is so good and you're so hungry, you just cut and swallow. So let's start there before we get down the digestive tract. Tell us about the chewing.
So, and actually it's 32 times, and it should actually be a bolus of juice that goes down. Okay, so that when it hits that hydrochloric acid in your stomach, it doesn't splash. And a lot of people wind up having acid reflux because of the factor that the foods that they're eating is causing that. The other part of that is that when you actually chew that food, you're putting enzymes into that food so that when they do go down into the digestive tract can recognize them. Just think about the factor that your car, if you got a Mercedes-Benz or Rolls-Royce and they tell you to put regular gas in it, high-test gas in it, you put that in there. You don't put regular. And so the same thing for the body. In terms of the nutrient piece of chewing, let's look at that as your starter, because if your battery is dead and you try to cut that car on, you ain't getting nothing. But once that battery is alive, it starts the car. Well, your teeth in chewing food, that's why it's really important, one, that you have as many of your teeth as possible, and two, allow that to break down the food into smaller molecules so that the body can accept it. Because when we gulp that food, the molecules are not the digestive juices are not able to really digest that food. So chewing is very important.
Wow. Thank you for breaking that down. So after we've chewed, how many times again you said we should chew our food before swallowing?
32 times before you
32.
swallow it. And I know that's a lot. That's a lot of chewing. But yeah.
Wow. But we see that in animals too when they eat. They keep chewing and chewing and chewing, and people say they're chewing their car. They're chewing. So I guess that's what we have to do: keep chewing until it's almost liquefied. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And the other part of that, Carl, is the fact that if we watch lower animals, they only eat foods during each season. They can't go to the grocery store and get something different. Whatever's in their environment is what they eat. And we need to understand that we should be eating foods that are at least 100 miles radius of where we live and not beyond that, because of the fact that not only is it about the food, but it's about the energy of the food.
Well, let me interrupt you and ask you this, though, that since you mentioned that, 11 after the top of the hour, many of us listening right now live in urban areas. You know, there are not too many farms around with animals on. So how do we compensate for that?
So you compensate for that by especially if you don't live in a food desert. Okay, you compensate for that for seeing what foods are close that are organic before you go getting other foods. And you know, you should eat as much clean food as possible. It doesn't all have to be organic, and if it's organic, it should be close to you, because here we are in Washington, D.C. If we get something from California, what has to happen is before they put that organic food on the truck, what has to happen is that they have to pick it immature so that when it gets here to Washington, D.C., it'll have a shelf life. So we need to look at eating foods clean, and especially if we don't live in food deserts. People who live in food deserts, what has to happen with them is that when they get that food, the first thing they have to do is chew it well. Second, take those digestive enzymes and the probiotics. And then third, be able to eat the food in its proper combinations, because the body has an understanding of how to digest stuff. Things that, for instance, when you go to a restaurant, the first two things they give you is bread and water. That's to fill you up. The cold water shuts your digestive tract down. So now your digestive tract isn't functioning, so that's why when you sit there and eat a little bit, you get full. But the body is not getting in the nutrients and the calories that it needs in order for it to function. So what happens now is that now your body is in a space where now your adipose tissues are gonna pick up that fatty tissue, and your bowels are not gonna move, and your bowels.
I think we may have lost Dr. Akmul, but we're coming up on a break anyway. It's 13 minutes after the top of that. We'll get him back so you can speak to him. Family, you got a question about digestion, you want to lose weight, this is Doctor you need to talk to, Dr. Akmul Muwwakil. We'll take your phone calls in 4 minutes, though. We'll be back right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. And good morning once again, family. 20 minutes after the top of the hour, I guess, Dr. Akmul Muwwakil, he's given us a new way how to lose weight. He says you don't have to take that jab and the chemicals, but it all starts with what you eat, when you put that food in your mouth and what kind of food you put in your mouth. So, Dr. Akmul, I don't know where we dropped off, but you can pick it up and continue your thoughts. And Mark in Baltimore has a question for you.
Well, when we start looking at weight, it's not really weight, it's waste, because of the fact that what we're eating is not going into the body, nourishing the body, and the waste byproducts of that leave the body in a timely manner. What people don't realize is that your bowel movement is not supposed to smell. You're not supposed to put a sign on the door and say, don't use for 30 days under construction. You're not supposed to do that. When you go in and drop that load, it should be plop, plop, fizz, fizz, what a wonderful feeling this is. And when you roll out, the person that comes behind you shouldn't be spraying there to sweeten up the smell of the bathroom. But when that happens, that means that it's been in your system too long. When you see that a person and their abdomen is protruding, this is women and men, and women specifically if they're not pregnant. When you see that abdomen protruding, that abdomen is telling you that your body is storing waste, because that's your small intestines. And if you was to take someone's small intestines out, that would stretch 2 stories, a 2-story high building. And so when you got all of that waste in there, that's called malnutrition. Matter of fact, the World Health Organization calls that malnutrition. And so in doing that, we're not receiving the nutrients from the foods that we're eating.
All right, as I mentioned, we've got some folks who want to talk to you. 22 after the top there. Mark's in Baltimore. He's on line 2. Mark, good morning. You're on with Dr. Akmul.
Life is full of things to manage. Your work, your family, your plans, and your treatment. Consider Kesimpta, ofatumumab 20 milligram injection. You can take it yourself from the comfort of home. If you're ready for something different, ask your healthcare provider about Kesimpta and check out the details at kesimpta.com. Brought to you by Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation.
Welcome back to Dealing Together. First caller?
I bought 3 sweaters to get the 4th free.
Oh, you got fleeced. Next caller?
I traded my old Samsung at AT&T for a new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus and chose my plan.
That's not a bad deal.
It is not.
Our best smartphone deals. Your choice of plan. Learn how to get the new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus with Galaxy AI on us with eligible trade-in. AT&T. Connecting changes everything.
Offers vary by device. Subject to change. S24 plus 256 gigabyte offer available for a limited time. Terms and restrictions apply. See att.com/Samsung for details.
Yes, sir. Good morning, gentlemen. Here in Baltimore, we may have a lot of food deserts in certain parts, but I notice in some parts of Baltimore we have community gardens. So my question is, how does one get started in putting together a community garden so it would do two functions? Hopefully serve nutritious food that's being grown, and also give an education process to all ages, particularly young people, the importance of eating right, how much, and what to expect. And do you have any resources on community gardening? Thank you.
So the thing with the community garden is a couple. One of them is look around the neighborhood, find where there's an empty lot, find out who owns the lot. Go to the city of Baltimore and find out what resources they have for community gardens, because in several different states, they're now starting to put together community gardens because of the fact that there are so many food deserts, especially in the African American community. The other thing is that, if you live, we used to live in communities. If you live in a community, start talking to the people within the community to put a garden together, and then again go to the local government and find out what kind of programs they have, because they have programs in place. Congress gives them money for different things of that nature. So that's building the urban city. And so that's what I would suggest to you. I don't know too much about where in Baltimore to do that, but I would suggest that you would go on Maryland's website or even Google it. Dr. Google tell you everything. Google it and find out where they are or where you can find funds to do that. But I would say start a community group that is interested in gardening, because we need to do that, especially with the bad quality of food that we have. I live in a very affluent neighborhood, but the food in the supermarket that's supposed to be an elite supermarket is not good. I go to the same market over in over on Wisconsin Avenue in Washington D.C., and their food is sparkling. I come back to my neighborhood, and the people in my neighborhood pay good money for their food, and their food is dead. So we have those kind of crises. But yes, we need to begin to do more urban gardening, and we need to get our children involved in that, because of the fact that they say that it'll be 1 billion people. This is World Health Organization said by 2030. Okay, that's what 6 years from now. There'll be 1 billion people worldwide who are obese or overweight. And so we're talking basically about our children. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, we have there's one in three people, adults, are overweight, and our
Well, let
children
me
are
jump in.
trailing.
Yeah, let me jump in here before we go down that road, because I want to pick up on something that Mark said and something that you said too about the food that the deserts, food deserts, and the fact that we should be farming our own food. But isn't it true that because you mentioned what we did when we were growing up, where we lived and we ate food that was in season, but isn't the nutrients have been depleted in the soil? So does that depreciate the quality of food that we're eating that comes from the soil if they don't have the same nutrients that we had when we were growing up?
Yes, and you're absolutely right, Carl. The piece of that is that's why supplementation is necessary, because when you start to take supplementation, what happens? First off, I talked earlier about enzymes, and so enzymes break down the food. So the first thing is that that'll go down. The food. Just take the enzyme, take the food. The food will start to break down in its proper places. Then when you start to take things like micronutrients, which are minerals and vitamins, okay, what happens is that boosts whatever you didn't get from the food. But the major piece of that is the fact is that you're chewing that food. And the soil, listen, we're killing the earth. Look at global warming. We are killing the earth. So the earth is doing the same to us. So when we start talking about soil, most of the soil that we use in most places is deficient. It's deficient in some kind of mineral or vitamin. And so that's why when they do organic, you rotate the soil so that the same vegetables and fruits that are coming out of the ground don't deplete that soil. So you put something else in there so it gets some other kinds of nutrients.
All right, 28 off the top there, Doctor. Let me ask you this, though. For the folks who are still eating meat, what do you have for them? You mentioned they should chew their food much longer, but digestively, how long does it stay in their digestive system?
So that meat can stay in your digestive system 3-4 days, especially if it's not chewed well. You know, and don't get me wrong. You know, everybody is not supposed to be a vegan or vegetarian. You have some people who have to eat meat because of their blood type. People should understand what your blood type is and what foods you should eat for your blood type, because that's the fuel that drives your body. So,
and hold that thought right there. That's important, what you just mentioned, though. But how do we know what food we should be eating that pertains to our particular blood type?
There's a book that's called Eating for Your Blood Type. Matter of fact, you can Google it, and it'll give you information about what you should be eating for your blood type. And the interesting thing about that is that I have O positive blood. So whenever I eat things like legumes, like lentils, I always take digestive enzymes because the legumes are not conducive for my blood type. So that'll give me bloating. I can have gas from it. And so I had to really work to find that out as I dealt with that. So Eating for Your Blood Type is one of the books that people can purchase, but also they can go online and get the whole list of things of that nature. And what I tell people is that most medical doctors are not going to give you your blood type, but go volunteer some blood at the Red Cross. And what will happen is that they have to understand what your blood type is, because they're giving that blood to somebody else, so that you now begin to understand what your blood type is, so that you can eat foods that's going to help that. Because you know, we have to do this. If people don't take anything else away from what I'm saying today, this is the best. This is the thing they should take away. You're a chemist, and your body is a chemistry factory. And everything you put into it, onto it, and think about has to do with the exchange of the transformation of chemistry within your body. And if the chemistry is not right, then the body's going to try to figure out what to do with it. And if the body can't do anything with it, it's going to store it. And as it stores, it's going to continue to cause havoc within your body. So now you not only have overweight or obesity. Now here comes diabetes. Here comes hypertension. Okay, arthritis. Because of the fact that the body's not getting nutrients. And you should ask yourself this: why do you eat food? What is the purpose of you eating food? In our program, we get into that so that people have the understanding of why you're eating this food. So if you're eating cake, why are you eating the cake? Is it because of the fact that you're craving the cake, or is it because of the fact that I just want something sweet for the moment? So we should understand why we eat food.
That is interesting. So why do we eat food?
We should be eating food for nourishment. That's why we should eat food. Here we have a gorilla, big gorilla. What is he eating? Or what is she eating? They're eating twigs. They're eating leaves. They're eating branches. But they're healthy. When's the last time you heard a gorilla had cancer? Or a giraffe had arthritis? So why is it that humans have that? Humans have that because of the fact that we don't eat. We don't know how to eat. That's our biggest problem. We don't know how to eat. And so because we don't know how to eat, now we have all of these disharmonies we call diseases. We don't have to have cancer.
Yeah, hold that thought right there, Doc. We got to take a short break. When we come back, though, Dr. Sebi has taught us that we should eat what he calls electrical food that reproduces, food that have seeds like grapes and watermelons and stuff like that. I want you to expound on that, if your thoughts on that, if you're in sync with Dr. Sebi has been teaching us. Family, you want to join this conversation with Dr. Akmul Muwwakil, reach out to us at 800-450-7876, and we'll take your phone calls in 4 minutes right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB, and also in the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. And good morning once again, family. 22 minutes away from the top of the hour, Dr. Akmul Muwwakil. He's got a program to help you lose weight, and it's only 4 weeks, and so we're breaking down how you do lose weight without taking that jab. A lot of people are taking that jab and losing weight, and they're all aglow with it, but they don't know the side effects. Well, there's a different way to lose weight, and Dr. Akmul is sharing that with us. Before we go back to that, let me just remind you, coming up later this morning, we're going to hear from A. Peter Bailey, because this is the 59 years ago, Malcolm X was assassinated at the Audubon Ballroom in Manhattan, and Peter was there. He's one of the last persons to actually speak to Brother Malcolm, so he's going to take us back on that journey. Before we speak with Peter, though, Black Women for Positive Changes, Dr. Stephanie Myers will update us on the group's new nonviolence techniques. And also, before we get to Dr. Myers, Pan-African educator Dr. Chike Akua will also check in. And also tomorrow, Brother Ishmael Muhammad, one of Elijah Muhammad's sons, will be here to preview this weekend's Savior's Day event that's going to take place in Detroit. And also, chematologist and griot Brother Ashra Kwesi, the master teacher, along with Mayor Kwesi, are going to join us as well. So if you are in Baltimore, make sure your radio's locked in tight on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. So again, before we left for the break, Dr. Akmul, my question, Dr. Sebi is always recommending that we should not eat foods that don't have seeds. He calls them electric food. Your thoughts on that? And I got a couple of tweet questions for you as well.
Well, yes, Carl, just think about this, you and your audience. When we grew up in the 50s and the 60s, a grape had seeds in it. A watermelon had seeds in it. Now we're seeing foods that don't have seeds in it. So that means that those foods are being manufactured as hybrids. And Dr. Sebi talked about the fact of hybrids. We came from a...
Uh-oh. I hope we haven't dropped him again. 20 minutes away from the top. I can't see if you can get him back, because he's going down an important road here, and then folks need to know about chewing your food and also how to lose weight. And I got two tweet questions for him. I want to tweet, and I'm just read it while we get him back. The tweeter says, so when I'm craving liver or certain food my body's telling me, for example, that I need vitamin C or B. I'm going to throw in here for the beer drinkers. When they're craving a beer, what does that mean? So I'm going to ask Dr. Akmul that. And also got another two question about what's recommended for men to ward off prostate cancer. So those are two of the two questions we have. Do we have Dr. Akmul back yet with us? Because we want to find. Okay, well, hopefully he'll pick up the phone and sometimes you're talking when the phone drops and you're talking, you don't realize that you've dropped the call. But he's got a 4-week system here, family, that helps you to lose weight. He breaks it all the way down, how to lose weight. So, Dr. Akmul, I'm gonna let you finish your thought. Go ahead.
Okay, so we have to look at the fact that Dr. Sebi was right when he talked about foods with seeds. We grew up eating foods that had seeds in it, and so now we're eating foods that don't have seeds in them. So a lot of the food that we're eating is manufactured in such a way where it doesn't have any nutritional value to it, and so we need to eat live foods because of the fact that those foods, for instance, green vegetables, we need to eat green vegetables. We need to eat foods that are in season. And we need to eat foods that have a basis where it's going to give us nutrients. So, and Dr. Sebi was always talking about the fact that we have too much mucus. And he was right because of the fact that we're eating foods that we shouldn't be eating that have no nutritional value. And we're eating them in the wrong time. A lot of people have gluten intolerance, and that gluten intolerance is because of the fact that you're eating wheat, for instance, when that wheat's growing, opposed to when it's harvested. And so as we eat foods in that manner, what happens is that they don't give us the electricity that they need. The colors of those foods, for instance, those colors like reds and oranges, those are foods that have antioxidants in them. Those are cancer-fighting foods. When we start looking at foods that are, for instance, fruits are for cleansing the body, so that the body is cleansing. When we eat things like starch, we should eat your starch. The basis of your starch should be in spring and in summer, and not in winter and not in fall, because of the fact that they become gelatinous. So now they're not giving you the electricity that you need. What they're giving you is the waste byproducts that sits in your system, so that now you wind up saying, well, I'm overweight or I'm getting fat.
All right, before I do the tweets for you, we're on line 2. Brother Agree has just joined us from Miami. He's got a question for you. Good morning, Brother Agree.
Good morning, Brother Carl and Doctor. I have 2 questions. My first question is eating by blood type. Isn't that based on a theory? And my second question is colonic irrigation as a means to removing the waste from our body. What is your take on that?
So in terms of blood type, all of it's a theory, okay? But the factor of it is that when you take that theory and you put that theory to work, does that theory work for you? And it's been proven that it does. Western medicine has always poo-pooed things that has to do with alternative medicine, because you're talking about big pharma. So if I can get your weight down and you're not taking pharmaceuticals that cost you $1,000 a month, they don't like that. So they're gonna say, well, no, that don't work. Okay. When you talk about the factor of your blood, you have to be real specific about the chemistry of your blood and how that chemistry works for you. Because of the fact that you said theory, so put it in this content. Why in the world, if it was just a theory and it didn't work, why in the world would the Red Cross single out blood types as they group the blood to give to other people? If there was not some value to that, there are certain antigens that can't work with other antigens. Old blood works with them all. And
the second question?
The colonic irrigation.
Okay. So colonic irrigations, I've never had one, but I've sent people for them who I've put on fast. Colonic irrigation assists in the breaking down of getting waste out of the body. But even with a colonic irrigation, you have to do other things to keep that and maintain that. Because if you continue to get a colonic irrigation, and I tell people, my patients, I tell them, I said, well, if you're going to get a colonic irrigation, get them every other week and don't get no more than 4. Because what happens is that you start destroying that bacteria that's in there because of the consistency of that. And what happens is that can cause you to have malnutrition again. And malnutrition, like I said earlier, is not necessarily that your abdomen's protruding, but malnutrition is also a piece where you are thin. You have some people who are vegans that are malnourished because they're not getting the proper nutrients that they need, which could now cause other kinds of issues down the road because of the fact that they're suffering from malnutrition. Right. But colonic irrigation works, but there's a lot of other things that you have to do to maintain the balance of that.
Yes, sir.
All righty. Thank you, Brother Agree.
Thank you very much.
All righty.
Thank you
13 away. 13 away from the top of the hour. And the tweet question. Tweeter says, so when I'm craving liver or a certain food, my body's telling me, for example, that I need vitamin C or B. And I threw in there, if you're craving a beer, what does that mean?
So when we have cravings, each organ from a child, I'm an acupuncturist by trade and licensed. Each organ has their own set of tastes. Your liver likes sour. Okay. Your heart likes it burnt stuff. Okay. Your kidneys like salt. Your lungs, they kind of like metal, because if you get a cold and you get that metal taste in your mouth. And the spleen and the stomach have to do with sweets, which is the digestive system. So if you're craving, for instance, B vitamins, that may be because of the fact that your liver, which stores the B vitamins, and your spleen or your digestive tract are out of balance. And so you might find also that you might get a twitch or you might be tired. And so because of that, that's a B12. That could be a B12 situation. It could be a B complex situation because of the fact that the organ is not able to function because there's a craving. When people have sweet cravings, it's really easy to get rid of a sweet craving. It's real easy. And the recipe is that you take a tablespoon of steel cut oats, STEEL cut oats, and you put that tablespoon in a glass of water, in an 8-ounce glass, and then you put distilled water, not spring water, not alkaline water, distilled water in it, because the distilled water is going to extract the nutrients from it. You put a cover over it, you set it on the kitchen table or on the counter overnight away from heat. In the morning, you strain off the oatmeal. Now, if you want to if you want to eat the oatmeal, that's fine. But you strain the water off of the oats and you drink the water. Within 3 days, if not less, you'll find that your sweet cravings diminish.
And the beer drinkers?
And so beer drinkers, if you drink a lot of beer, you're putting them hops into your system, and hops is nice, but hops is sedative. So that means that as they're sedating the digestive tract. And so if you're going to drink beer, then you should take enzymes so that it breaks that malt down in the small intestines. And that's where that has to be broken down at. The alcohol portion of it is synthesized through your liver. So your liver has to synthesize it to maintain the ability to break that alcohol down so that it comes out through the urine, so that in some cases it comes out through the fecal matter. And so with the beer, you're talking about hops. So that's sedating. So when you take in the enzymes, what happens is that the enzymes helps the gut, and the enzymes and the probiotics, and more specifically the probiotics because it's in the gut, and the probiotics to keep it from fermenting and causing you to have yeast, because of the fact that when beer is made, it's made with yeast and the hops. And so when that yeast gets into your system, it begins to expand. And as it expands, what happens is that it blocks other foods and other nutrients from getting into the small intestine, into the blood, which now is called a process called the leaky gut syndrome. And a lot of people have leaky gut syndrome, and that's one of the things that the program. It's not weight, it's waste. That's one of the things that we talk about specifically, is the factor of how not to have that yeast sitting in your small intestines, because of the factor that can become a carcinogen. Candida albicans is actually worse than cancer. And the reason I say that is because of the fact that when you have Candida albicans, which is yeast that's in your blood and in your small intestines, what happens now is the fact that you can't eat nothing that's a starch. You can't eat a cookie. You can't eat a piece of bread. You can't eat pasta. You can't eat none of that. You have to eat nothing but fresh vegetables. You can't have any sugar at all, and fruits. You have to be real limited with that, because if not, it continues to increase the yeast, which now causes you to have more malnutrition.
All right, Doc, hold that thought right there. 8 away from the top of the hour. Another tweet for you. Tweeter says, what do you recommend for men to take to ward off prostate cancer?
Okay. So there's a formula that I make this called melatonin that helps. But when we start talking about prostate cancer, we have to talk about the factor of nutrients again. So you're talking about omega-3, 6, and 9. Okay. You're talking about taking B vitamins. You're talking about wearing boxers and not briefs, so that the scrotum is able to hang outside and not be so cluttered into the crotch of your body. You should wear loose pants, not tight jeans, those kinds of things, because the prostate, which is part of the scrotum, has to be outside of the body. You need to eat clean foods, a lot of vegetables, a lot of fruits, some nuts, because you need some fatty acids. Stay away from fried food. Stay away from fried food, because of the fact that that's one of the things that's causing that prostate cancer to happen. We don't have to have.
Hold that thought right there, Doc. We got to take a quick break here. 6 minutes away from the top of the hour. I'll be back in 4 minutes. I'll let you finish up and more information on the weight loss program that you have for 4 weeks. Family, you want to join us? Reach out to us at 800-450-7876. Your phone calls in 4 minutes right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB, and also in the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. And good morning, family. We're on with Dr. Akmul Muwwakil. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, brother. Forgive me if I messed it up. But continue to finish your thought on the tweeter who want to know about prostate issues.
So with that, you need to eat foods that, for instance, have lycopene in them, like tomatoes. Now, let me say this about tomatoes. Tomatoes is also a nightshade. So if you've got arthritic pain or you got pain, then you shouldn't be eating tomatoes, because of the fact that it has selenine acid, and that selenine acid can increase the pain. However, on the flip side, that lycopene that's in there That's going to help to balance the prostate to reduce the prevalence of prostate cancer. Also, virgin olive oil, and nuts. They're heavy in omega-3 fatty acids, and that's what you want. You also want to eat foods like carrots. Carrots and cabbage are foods that you should be eating because of their antioxidant properties. You want to eat foods that have antioxidants. Carrots are very well and very good for cleansing the body itself. I mean, if you've ever done a fast with carrots and beets, you'll see that once you do that, your whole body begins to vibrate electrically. And then green tea. Green tea is really good, and Asians have less prostate issues because of the fact that every day, and when I trained in China, every day they drink green tea. Every day they drink green tea. And so, get you some green tea. I would suggest that you get green tea that's not in a tea bag, but it's loose where you can measure it out and take it that way. Because when you do that, it's less manufacturing, and you have more of the tea than you have of other kinds of things in there. The other piece of that is zinc. As men, we need to have zinc, because without the zinc, that's a telltale sign that prostate cancer is coming. So we need to maintain the balance of our zinc level. And what I tell men is that don't take over 100 milligrams of zinc a day. And when you take zinc, you have to take copper, because of the fact that zinc will displace copper. And when it displaces copper, it could do several things. One, it can cause your hair to gray really early. Two, it can affect your central nervous system. So you really, and three, it can affect the way that your blood flows through your body. So when you take zinc, you're going to take 3 milligrams of copper that will create that balance for that. And then there are other things that you actually could take that's natural, that will reduce and or eliminate the prospects of prostate cancer. And the other piece of that is the fact that that the Chinese is so detailed to the point where they have it so that depending on your age is depending on how many times a week you should ejaculate. And so when you break it down in that manner, what begins to happen is that you begin to waltz around that whole prostate issue. But it's about keeping yourself healthy. It's about keeping yourself nourished, and it's about you loving yourself.
Right. And Doc, we got to cut it short here because Dr. Akua is on deck. We get to him momentarily. But the weight loss program that you have, folks want to get more information. How do they reach you? Is there a website, email address?
So they can go to www.healenarts.net. Again, it's www.healenarts.net, and it's healingarts.net. I can be reached by phone at 301-249-2445. That's 301-249-2445. And if they want to email me, it's info@Dr.Akmal Speaks.
All right. Spell that for the audience again. Your first name.
I'm about to. It's info@AKMALSPEAKS.com.
Life is full of things to manage: your work, your family, your plans, and your treatment. Consider Kesimpta, ofatumumab 20 milligram injection. You can take it yourself from the comfort of home. If you're ready for something different, ask your healthcare provider about Kesimpta and check out the details at kesimpta.com. Brought to you by Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation.
Welcome back to Dealing Together. First caller?
I bought 3 sweaters to get the 4th free.
Oh, you got fleeced. Next caller.
I traded my old Samsung at AT&T for a new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus and chose my plan.
That's not a bad deal.
It is not.
Our best smartphone deals, your choice of plan. Learn how to get the new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus with Galaxy AI on us with eligible trade-in. AT&T. Connecting changes everything.
Offers vary by device, subject to change. S24 plus 256 gigabyte offer available for a limited time. Terms and restrictions apply. See att.com/Samsung for details.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. And thank you for sharing all this information with us. And the weight loss program, what time does it start? When?
So it starts next Tuesday on the 27th. It's virtual. It's for 2 hours it's 2 hours each session for 4 weeks. So it starts on the 27th and it ends on the 19th of May.
All right. Thanks, Doc.
And it's
Thank you.
from 9.
Thank you for sharing all that information with us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Be well, enjoy your life as you peacefully walk in health.
All righty. That's Dr. Akmul Muwwakil. All right, let's turn our attention now at 6th after the top of the hour. Dr. Akua Chike is here. I hope I'm pronouncing it. Akua. That's what I'm trying to say. Chike Akua. Dr. Akua, Hotep, welcome back to the program.
Hotep, great to be with you, Carl.
Let me just tell the family, because he's been here before. He's an assistant professor of educational leadership at Clark Atlanta University. He's also going to share with us today the unique way of using the beauty of Black history and culture to improve our children's literacy and achievement. Give us a little bit about your background, because it's been a minute since you've been here.
Sure. The first part of my professional life was as a middle school language arts teacher. So I was a teacher in public schools for 10 years, and then I was a reading specialist for 3 years. But each of those years, I was teaching in the area of language arts, and oftentimes I was dealing with students who were performing below grade level. I was also teaching in predominantly Black schools, and so with my experiences, I'm a former Teacher of the Year as well, and I have written and developed a number of African-centered and culturally relevant reading resources for students, teachers, as well as parents.
And I got to ask you this question, because we woke up one morning and then we found out that our children are not learning. They're not reading, and they're also doing math. They're failing. And they gave the numbers for Baltimore, just horrendous, the students in Baltimore. But Baltimore's not alone. The public school system is just failing our students. Why are our students struggling with, just for example, with reading? Why are they struggling how to read?
Sure. Well, first, a shout out to all of the hardworking teachers and administrators and parents who are doing their very best with our young people. But there are some systemic issues that have been roadblocks and barriers to our children's academic excellence. One of the things that I noticed when I was a language arts teacher and a reading teacher is that the curriculum did not meet the needs of our children. The curriculum that was being taught didn't have examples of Black excellence in it that our children could take an example from. In addition to that, most teachers, however well-intentioned, have not been trained in culturally relevant and responsive teaching methods. In other words, scientific research has shown that there are certain methods of teaching that unlock and unleash the brilliance within our children. And most haven't been exposed to those methods. In addition to that, some of the challenging situations that our children find themselves in the home and in the community have added to that. So prior to the pandemic, there was already some challenges in literacy with Black children. But coming into, through, and out of the pandemic, those numbers have dropped even more significantly. And so it's very important that we kind of sound the alarm and let people know that we need to be focusing on literacy, because literacy affects all other areas of education. So in other words, when a child goes into science class, they're going to have to read. When they go into their social studies class, they're going to have to read. Obviously, in language arts and reading class, they're going to have to read. But even in math, how will they understand a math problem, a word problem, if they can't read? So we like to say that all teachers are reading teachers. If you ask a teacher what they teach, they may say, oh, I teach science or social studies. No, all teachers are reading teachers. But guess what? Parents must be reading teachers as well. And so this is not a problem that cannot be solved. It's just that a lot of the resources go in the wrong direction oftentimes. And so that's why I'm making brothers and sisters aware of some of the things that we can do.
Well, how do you, 11 minutes after time there, how do you attack this problem, though, without it seeming that our children are somehow in fear, they can't read and understand and comprehend as well as white students can, that we need remedial efforts to get us up to par? But you're saying that's not the issue. They're not smarter than us. But so what's the issue then? How do you say that? Because, that's what you're going to get. Oh, I told you, those are the ones who are bringing down the test scores, those black kids. Those are the ones. That's what the white teachers and school administrators are going to say. Why can't they learn just like our children? How do you combat that?
Well, first, our children, as I said before, our children learn in very unique ways. There are certain methods that have been proven to unlock and unleash the genius within black students. But one of the problems is the way that the scores are reported and different things of that nature. So I'll give you an example. Many people who are listening have heard probably the term achievement gap. And that term is problematic from this standpoint. Oftentimes when you hear that term achievement gap, it's supposedly the gap in achievement between white students and black students, white student achievement supposedly being higher. That's problematic because white achievement is mediocre at best. And so we're not striving to be equal to white achievement. Our goal is black excellence, okay? And that's far above where white achievement is. But secondly, when you use the term achievement gap, that leaves out a significant understanding of what's really happening in so many of our schools. It's not really an achievement gap. It's an opportunity and access gap. These access and opportunity gaps cause the persistent academic gaps. Let me give you an example of what I mean. When I say access gap, many of our children don't have access to highly qualified and certified teachers in the core content areas of language arts, math, science, and social studies. In other words, you go into a lot of schools, and this was before the pandemic, you go into a lot of schools, the teachers teaching those subjects were not certified in those areas. Well, now there's even more of a shortage of teachers and even more of a shortage of black teachers. And so a lot of times it may be a substitute. It may be somebody who has not been trained in that area. So access to a quality, equitably funded school is an example of an access gap. An example of an opportunity gap is the lack of certified teachers in the content areas in predominantly black schools. So it's these persistent access and opportunity gaps that lead to what people call these achievement gaps. And it's very important.
And hold that thought right there, Dr. Akua. We got to take a short break. When we come back, I'll let you finish your thought and tell us, because, our students, mostly they're in the black neighborhoods, the teachers are black, the administrators are black, and yet still our students are failing. What are they not doing? Can you point that out and help them out? And those teachers going to work this morning, please drive carefully and please listen to Dr. Akua. We'll be back in 4 minutes, though, right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB, and also in the DMV. We're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. And good morning, family. And our guest is Dr. Akua. Dr. Akua is an educator discussing why our children are failing in the school system. And if you don't have, this should be a concern, even if you don't have a child or a grandchild in the school system. The children are our future. That's what they have to compete now. It was different when we were going to school. Now, the internet has made the world so much smaller. They're not just competing with students stateside. They could be globally. So we've got to figure out a way how to turn the system around. Before we left the break, and I was asking Dr. Akua, I'll let him finish his thought, but also because part of the problem is these school systems are run by people who look like us, administrators, teachers. They run the schools. We're still failing. But Dr. Akua, I'm going to let you finish your thought, and then tackle that question for me, and then Charles in Baltimore has a question for you.
Okay, sure. So, again, I want to be very clear and send a shout out to hardworking teachers and educational administrators who are showing up for our children every day. I don't want it to seem as if I or we are bashing them, because we know that they work very hard. But let me say also that when you asked the question before the break, well, what are Black teachers not doing? A big part of the challenge is that most Black teachers have not been trained in culturally relevant and responsive teaching methods that are known to transform our students' progress. Okay. In addition to that, many of our children are coming from home situations and communities where there's a need for trauma-informed care. Many of our children have experienced trauma in the home or in the community, and it goes unaddressed, and that stands as a barrier to their academic achievement. So culture is the key. That's the critical mediating factor in increasing student achievement. But another key is the social emotional learning modalities that allow a child to move past, to process and move past their trauma so that they can get to academic excellence. So there has to be some bridges between the school and the community, between the teachers and the parents, to really be able to reach the children. And of course, this is the challenging part. I don't mean to oversimplify that part, but we can talk about some solutions as we move on.
Love to talk about solutions. That's what we're here for. 23 after the top. As I mentioned, Charles is waiting for us. He's in Baltimore. Charles, your question for Dr. Akua.
Yes. How you doing, Doctor?
Doing well. How are you today?
I'm great. Now, my parents used to ask me, how did I actually know something? And I would say, they said. And my parents would ask me, did you actually check for yourself? Did you do the experiment? So I would ask, did you actually research and verify what you're saying about reading? And what receipts do you have to back up these assumptions? What studies have you done? Because it seems like only white studies have been done. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Charles.
That's a great question. Thank you. And it sounds like you had amazing parents, and we need more parents doing that daily debrief with their children to get them to do critical thinking. When you ask what studies I've done, I'd like to invite you to check out a recent report that I published called Dismantling the Preschool to Prison Pipeline Through Black Literacy and Education for Transformation. Again, it's called Dismantling the Preschool to Prison Pipeline Through Black Literacy and Education for Transformation. You can download this special report for free. I was commissioned by the Wayfinder Foundation to write this report, and we did a national campaign we launched it from Washington, D.C. We went to Minneapolis. We went to Jackson, Mississippi, and we'll be going to some other cities and states to do the same. But you can go to wayfinder.foundation. Again, wayfinder.foundation, and download that free report. When you get to that website, simply click on resources. Again, wayfinder.foundation. And that's a special report that I did specifically on this issue. If you go to my website, readingrevolution.org, you can see several of our books, some of the reports that we've done and research that we've conducted. One of those books is called Education for Transformation, The Keys to Releasing the Genius of African American Students. And another book is called Honoring Our Ancestral Obligations, 7 Steps to Black Student Success. So I'm really glad that you brought up that point, because a lot of times we're relying on information from white scholars, and that's inappropriate oftentimes for solving Black problems. So one of the things that would distinguish the type of research that I conduct is that I typically rely on the scholarship and past research of Black scholars, in particular Afrocentric scholars, who have centered us in the best of our history and culture. And using that lens, provide some insights and solutions that we don't typically find. So thank you for that question, buddy.
All right, 26 at the top. A tweet question coming in, or a comment actually. A tweeter says the parents in Florida are having to sign permission slips just for teachers to discuss Black history in the school system. I want to get your thoughts on that.
So for that, I would call people's attention to a Washington Post article that I wrote back in August. If you just Google my name, Chike Akua, and Washington Post, it'll come up. And my name is spelled Chike, last name Akua, Akua. The situation in Florida is very interesting, Brother Carl, because actually Florida has received a lot of media attention for a lot of their oppressive and repressive policies relative to the teaching of our history. The interesting thing about it is that most people don't know, and I talk about this in the Washington Post article, is that Florida actually has the most comprehensive law as it relates to Black history. The problem is most people don't know about it, and teachers can't teach what they don't know. This was the subject of my doctoral dissertation. The law came out in 1994, and I examined a number of state laws relative to the teaching of Black history, and I found Florida's to be most comprehensive in this way. Florida's law specifically says that all teachers must teach the African and African American contribution to whatever subject that they teach, not just in social studies. Other state laws would just relegate it to the social studies classroom, and they would say that teachers just had to teach about slavery. Well, we know our story didn't start in slavery, and when you start our story in slavery or civil rights, you're leaving out thousands upon thousands of years of incredible accomplishments. So one of the distinguishing features of the Florida statute or the Florida African American history legislation is they said specifically you must teach the African and African American contribution to whatever subject. So not just in social studies, but what is the African and African American contribution to math, the African and African American contribution to science, and on down the line. But again, teachers can't teach what they don't know. So I've been commissioned over the last 15 years to provide professional development to teachers and leaders in the state of Florida. In addition to that, written curriculum for them and provided even online training and other resources to them. But then the current administration came in and began developing retrograde policies that are intended to erase our history. And this is why it is something that has always been, and that is that our education must start in the home. If we know that these things are happening, then we must start with our children at home to make sure that they can read and write properly and to make sure that they're exposed to the beauty of their history and culture.
All right, 30 minutes at the top. Dr. Akua is our guest. Earlier you mentioned, Dr. Akua, there's a shortage of teachers, but there's also an acute shortage of Black teachers, especially Black male teachers. How do we get over that hump? And what's the problem? Why can't we have more of our youngsters who are going to college, going into the teaching profession?
Well, as Malcolm X said, of all of our studies, history is best qualified to reward all research. So when we talk about the shortage of Black teachers, it is extremely important to understand that it has not always been that way. And as a matter of fact, there have been specific efforts to make sure that there's a shortage of Black and Black male teachers. If you go back prior to the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision, there were many Black teachers and many Black male teachers. As a matter of fact, it was one of the most cherished, coveted, and respected professions in the Black community, okay? But when the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision was released, the supposed intention was to desegregate schools. But instead of leading to desegregation and supposedly integration, it actually led to the disintegration of Black schools. And Dr. Leslie Fenwick tells us in her book, Jim Crow's Pink Slip, she tells us that literally over 100,000 Black teachers were either demoted, displaced, or out and out fired as a result of the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision. What does that mean, demoted? You had principals who were demoted to assistant principal and sent to white schools where some of them literally had their office in a closet and they had no power to do what an assistant principal would normally do. So that's what we mean by demoted. If they were an assistant principal, they were sent back into the classroom as opposed to being an assistant principal. So many were demoted, displaced, taken out of black schools, sent to white schools where they were disrespected and disregarded. And then some were just out and out fired and not offered a contract. And so this displacement of over 100,000 black teachers, we are now seeing the impact and the effect of that on our children, on our schools, and on our communities, because this is the first generation that has the least access to black teachers. I know in the DMV, there are a lot of schools that do have black teachers, but when you go throughout America, it is not so in that way.
And thank you for mentioning that. And hopefully the teachers have at least I know they're trying to get a new contract. They've been working for months or years probably now without a new contract in the Washington, D.C. area. We got to take a short break. When we come back, though, some of the things that we can do. How do we get our people to understand that the oppressor, they plan long term? We play short ball, small ball. They're looking long term. They want to make sure they stay on top forever. That's how the system of racism, white supremacy works. That's how Dr. Wilson taught us. That's what they're doing. This is why the problem it starts in the school system, and they can hope that will continue. So we continue. Our students don't get better educated, and their children won't get better educated, and the cycle continues. While their students, they reap the benefits, and they keep us down. So if you can figure that out, this is why you need to get involved, not because you don't have a child in the school system, because it's an attack on all of us. I'm going to get off my soapbox and take this short break. When we come back, and Dr. Akua will give us some solutions of what we can do to change the disparity between us and the others when it comes to especially reading, but math as well when it comes to education. Family, you want to join this conversation, reach out to us at 800-450-7876. Your phone calls in 4 minutes right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB, and also in the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. And good morning once again, family. 20 minutes away from the top there with our guest, Dr. Chike Akua. He's an educator, a Pan-Africanist as well. Before we go back to him, let me just remind you, coming up later this morning, we're going to hear from A. Peter Bailey. This is the 59th anniversary of Malcolm X's assassination. Brother Peter was at the Audubon Ballroom in Manhattan when Brother Malcolm was assassinated. He was actually one of the last persons to speak to Brother Malcolm, so he's going to tell us his story. He's going to take us back there 59 years ago. Before we reach out to Peter Bailey, though, we're going to speak with Black Women for Positive Changes, Dr. Stephanie Myers. She's going to update us on the group's nonviolence techniques. And tomorrow we're going to be joined by Brother Ishmael Muhammad. He's one of the sons of Elijah Muhammad. He's going to preview this weekend's Savior's Day, which is going to take place in Detroit. And also we're going to be joined by the chematologists and griots, Brother Ashra Kwesi and Mary Kwesi. You know, they're saying, know thyself. They say that's the genesis of our problem. We don't know who we are. And people will tell us anything. They'll tell us you're an ADOS or you're a fundamental American. Basically, you're African. But anyway, they're going to be here and they'll explain that for us. So make sure if you're in Baltimore, your radio's locked in tight on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. All right, Dr. Akua, I'm gonna let you finish your thought though. But give us some solutions. What can we do? Not necessarily if we're not necessarily working in the school system, and for those, recommendations for those in the school system and those of us who are outside.
Sure. One quick thing as a dovetail into solutions, it's important to know also that one of the challenges is that multi-millions of dollars in just about every school district are spent on curriculum materials that continue to miseducate our children. I can't emphasize that enough. Multi-millions of dollars are spent every year by curriculum that are not created by Black people or for Black children. And so
hold that thought right there, Dr. Akua. Is that done intentionally, or is that by design or by accident?
it's done intentionally, it's by design, and also by default. So imagine if you have this multi-million-dollar budget and you have to spend this money. Not spending it is not an option. You have to spend it, and you're under a deadline, and you may not know any Black vendors, but we're going to share some solutions with you. But that happens every year in almost every major district, and it constitutes what Dr. William Watkins calls the white architects of Black education. So even though they may not be there, these large white companies are still walking away with all this money, having provided curricula that provides no demonstrated track record of excellence. So now, with that in mind, now let's look at solutions.
And before you go to solutions, you got to remind the audience that that money is not their money. That's our money. That's taxpayers' money. But go ahead.
Absolutely. And school districts must be held accountable for that. Okay. So now let me rewind back to a number of years ago when I was a reading specialist. When I was hired, the principal told me that he was going to send all of these students to me who had not passed the state test in reading, but they did not have a curriculum in place, which I was glad that they didn't have a curriculum in place because I already knew that it probably wouldn't meet the needs of our children. So every day I would write up a brief reading selection about a Black hero or shero, ancient or modern, and I would add to it 10 multiple choice questions. And those multiple choice questions would deal with issues like vocabulary development, context clues, main idea, supporting details, all of the things that would show up on a state reading test. The only difference between what I was doing and what my students would encounter on the state reading test was that my reading selections were culturally relevant and responsive because it was about Black heroes and sheroes. Well, over time, as I began to collect these reading selections, it became clear that it should be a book. So I called on a good friend of mine who's also a teacher, Tavares Stevens, and we co-authored the book, Reading Revolution. Well, that book did very, very well. It went national. A lot of different school districts and parents were using it. And we saw tremendous improvement with children's engagement and achievement. And this is important because a lot of times you hear reports about student achievement, but engagement comes before achievement. Engagement means a child's interest in what they're doing, the fact that they're on task, okay? Well, in 2018, we began digitizing the content of Reading Revolution. What do I mean by digitizing? I mean, we wanted to put it on an interactive online platform that parents, teachers, and students could access. And we have successfully completed that, or we're in stage one of that. And so part one can be accessed online at readingrevolution.org. But here's what we've added. Knowing our children's learning styles, we have added a captioned video to go along with each reading selection. Now, why is that important? Because the captioned video allows our children to hear the pronunciation of the words and to see the words on the screen as they're being said, along with pictures and images, pictures and positive images of people who look like them. So in addition to the 10 multiple choice questions, we have a captioned video. We have a vocabulary activity. We have a grammar activity, and we have a writing activity. So there's 4 major activities for each of the 90 reading selections. And again, it's called Reading Revolution Online. Now, parents and teachers can go online to readingrevolution.org for a free demo. Again, readingrevolution.org. We want parents to check this out and to utilize this at home. And the idea is to do one of these brief reading selections a day. And that will allow our children to get what Dr. Edward Robinson called vitamin I for identity. And in the process of getting that vitamin I, then they will also begin to develop their reading, comprehension skills, their critical thinking skills, their vocabulary development, grammar, and writing skills, all in a culturally relevant way. But not only do we want parents to go on there and start doing this at home, we want parents to start taking it to their schools and telling their teachers and principals and superintendents about it. We are in several school districts where they have purchased school-wide site license or district-wide site licenses to have access to Reading Revolution. And we are on We're on a mission. And what we want to do is we want to reach at least 1 million Black children. But I want to be clear, Reading Revolution online is not just for Black children, because you may run into that. Somebody may say, an administrator or a teacher may say, well, we don't just have Black children. Well, guess what? All children need to know the truth about our history and culture. And so that's why we don't just talk about problems, we create solutions. We don't believe in having a critique without a corrective. And I couldn't sit idly by and watch our children struggle like this without putting a solution in place. So Reading Revolution is our solution. So you can go to readingrevolution.org and you can get a free demo. And so that's one of the things that I would highly recommend that we've put in place, Brother Carl. In addition to that, it's very important that we have quiet time in the evening where we spend at least 15 minutes reading with our child, asking them questions about what they read and so forth. That quiet time is so very important when you talk about reading fluency, when you talk about reading comprehension, the ability of a child to understand what they read, the ability for them to read without stumbling over words. That's what fluency is about. Vocabulary development and things of that nature. Doesn't take an hour or two every evening, just 15 minutes a day. This is what research has shown. 15 minutes a day will help to increase our children's literacy levels tremendously, but it has to be consistent and it has to be in an orderly and quiet environment.
Life is full of things to manage: your work, your family, your plans, and your treatment. Consider Kesimpta, ofatumumab 20 milligram injection. You can take it yourself from the comfort of home. If you're ready for something different, ask your healthcare provider about Kesimpta and check out the details at kesimpta.com. Brought to you by Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation.
Welcome back to Dealing Together. First caller?
I bought 3 sweaters to get the 4th free.
Oh, you got fleeced. Next caller?
I traded my old Samsung at AT&T for a new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus and chose my plan.
That's not a bad deal.
It is not.
Our best smartphone deals, your choice of plan. Learn how to get the new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus with Galaxy AI on us with eligible trade-in. AT&T. Connecting changes everything.
Offers vary by device, subject to change. S24 plus 256 gigabyte offer available for a limited time. Terms and restrictions apply. See att.com/Samsung for details.
All right, and before Sandra in Baltimore has a question for you, but before a tweet just came in and said that many of our children don't have computers and Wi-Fi in their homes. Where can they go and get these resources that you're talking about?
Sure, I would encourage them to do this in school, maybe after school, or to go to the local library. That's another way of doing it. But these are some of the things. Definitely, the local library is where that quiet reading time can happen. If you don't have a computer or a laptop, you can certainly use your cell phone. But if you don't have a cell phone or don't have internet access, then we would encourage people to go to the library for that.
Okay. And 11 away from the top of that. Sandra, as I mentioned, is calling from Baltimore. Sandra's on line 1. Good morning, Sandra. You're on with Dr. Akua.
Good morning, Carl. I can barely hear you.
Well, you're good. We can hear you. But so go ahead and speak for Dr. Akua.
Doctor, I was wondering, maybe that we are going all about education our children the wrong way. Maybe we need to go back to the drawing board. And by that, I mean, maybe we need to open our own school and have our own teachers to come in and teach our children from the beginning to the end. Because evidently, despite education is not working, the children have to go back and learn from scratch the ABCs all the way up to the age where they can begin to read and understand. Maybe we are expecting to put too much on them with the households that they come from, the type of parents that they have. We need everything for them. So maybe we need to go back and do our own educating. And this is when the people with money could come in. They could build schools for our children, for our teachers to teach, and some of our teachers to come back and reteach in our school system the way it used to be.
All right, let's give him a chance to respond. Thanks, Sandra. Dr. Akua?
Sure, thank you for that, sister. And I absolutely agree with you. And there's a very distinguished tradition of independent black schools and African-centered schools who have done just that. And so I certainly agree with that. The challenge for me is to meet our children where they are. So even if you took all of the independent schools that currently exist now, they could not service the millions of black children that are in need of education. And so it's important that we hold those who work in public education to accountability. As a matter of fact, public education, particularly in the South, as Du Bois tells us in the book Black Reconstruction, was largely a black idea. So we were the ones that made it possible for public education to take place. When we came out of the Civil War, we advocated for that and demanded free public education, and that is because we had it in Africa. We had it in the Nile Valley of Africa, free public education for males and females. When you look at the great empires of West Africa, we had free public education for males and females. When you look at the Moors, when they were in Spain, one of the first things that they did when they took over that area, they created free public schools for males and females. So that is a part of our ancestral tradition that goes back thousands of years. So it's only natural that once we gained our freedom here in America, we did the same thing. We advocated for the same thing. Again, I want to say that I agree with you that we should and must have our own schools and that we must support those schools. However, we also have millions that will not necessarily have an independent black school near them and that will be serviced by public schools. And so we have to have a presence in all of these spaces.
All right, 7 away from the top of the hour. We're coming up on a break, but when we come back, I want you to address the issue of ebonics. You know, some people think that, and I'm sure you remember the uproar when it was when people were talking about whether we should use ebonics in schools, that our children would learn much better if they were taught ebonically, and people can complain and says no, because when they go in the real world, they got to use standard English. But I want to get your thoughts on ebonics. Many of us are bilingual, so to speak, so we understand how to use ebonics and when to use it. Should this be taught in schools, or this technique be taught in schools? I want to get your thoughts on that when we get back. Family, we'll be back in 4 minutes right here with Dr. Akua. You can reach out to us if you want, right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. And good morning, family. Minute after the top of the hour, Dr. Stephanie Myers from Black Women for Positive Changes on deck. We'll get to her momentarily. Right now, we're with Dr. Akua. We're talking about education. He has some solutions to the problems why Jamal can't read. And before we left for the break, we were talking about ebonics. You know, should we use ebonics in the school system? And Dr. Akua, before you answer that question, Deirdre is calling from Baltimore on line 3, wants to talk about ebonics real quickly. Deirdre, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Yeah, I want to say something about ebonics. Yeah, I think that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. We need to teach our children how to speak properly in the beginning. And this ebonics, is dumbing the children down. That's making it worse than what it would have been in the first place. No, just holding our own children back to make somebody think that that's some language. It's ridiculous. No, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Deirdre. Dr. Akua, your thoughts?
Sure. Well, what is called ebonics, or African American Vernacular English, has been studied by linguists, and it's been determined that the way that we speak has West African speech patterns in it. So, and it has been determined to be a language. There are certain patterns that you see that characterize a language as opposed to a dialect. So what we call ebonics, or African American Vernacular English, and the way that we hear our brothers and sisters speak and the way that we speak, it is actually a language. The challenge for us is that we need to use it as a bridge to standard English. Our children need to be multilingual, not just bilingual. And so they need to understand standard English, or if we can keep it really real, as Dr. Asa Hilliard said, let's call it money English. Let's call it what it is, because in order to advance in this society, you have to be able to understand standard English. That doesn't mean that you have to give up your home language. It simply means you have to know how to make the switch. When I was growing up, I spoke the way that I spoke around my friends and in the community. But when an adult entered the context, I made the switch to standard English. What we're finding with a lot of young people today is not only can they not make the switch, they don't even know that a switch is necessary. And so that's when it's incumbent upon parents and teachers to teach children the difference. This is something that I did in my language arts and reading class, where I had a daily activity for them. And that's why we have a grammar activity in Reading Revolution Online. And I would tell my students, I would say, I'm listening to you. And the activities that I had in this grammar review were based on things that I would hear the students say. I'll give you an example. They might say, he ain't have his homework. So I would write that on the board. He ain't have his homework. And my students would have to rewrite that sentence, adding capitalization, punctuation, and changing the verb tense where necessary. Okay? And so there's nothing wrong with the way that we speak, as long as the person who hears us understands our communication. But the bottom line is, in order for us to improve our communication skills, our children have to be multilingual. They have to be able to go into any room and be able to communicate with whoever is there. And so I would say there's nothing to be ashamed about in terms of the way that we speak. When we were brought here, we had different languages, and English was forced upon us. But there's no reason why we can't master English as well as a matter of survival.
Yeah, but Dr. Akua, the question is, should you, as an educator, teach in Ebonics then? Would you be able to reach our students better if you taught them Ebonically?
So I think that was a big misconception that was blown up by the media when it was being said that teachers were teaching Ebonics. We don't have to teach Ebonics. Our children come to us already knowing Ebonics. We were using it as a bridge to get them to standard English. And an example of that is the one that I just said, where I would write sentences on the board that I heard them say, and they would have to translate it. Listen to my language. Translate, not correct. Translate it into standard English. When you say that that's bad English and things of that nature, that suggests that there's something wrong with the home language. We don't want to tell our children that there's something wrong with the way your mama talks or the way that, that your people talk. We just need to translate it into standard English so that our children know how to speak and communicate in whatever context they're in.
All right, hold that thought right there. Dr. Myers, stay with us for a second. Give us a little bit minute here. William's on line 3 calling from Fort Lauderdale. William, your question for Dr. Akua, real quick.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I've always felt like slavery, the trauma of slavery when we weren't allowed to read, always had something to do with our ability to read, although we can't overcome anything. But that's my question. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, William. Dr. Akua?
Thank you, brother, for that question. It's interesting that we were the ones that taught the world reading and writing and language and literature. But through the enslavement process, it became against the law to read. But coming through and out of the enslavement experience, something very interesting happened. We were able to close the literacy gap by 50% with the first generation out of slavery. Why? Because it was a community-focused endeavor. We were very, very clear that in order for us to be free, in order to improve our life chances, we needed every Black person, as many as possible, to be able to read. No one was too young and no one was too old to learn. And so really our churches became like the schools where everybody learned to read. This was, again, a community endeavor because it was understood that you can't advocate on behalf of Black people if you're illiterate. We need everybody to be able to read. We need people to be able to read and interpret the laws. We need people to be able to read and prepare other people to read. And so that was the difference back then. So we know that it can be done because it's been done before. And certainly our ancestors faced even more challenging circumstances.
All right. Thank you again for that call from William. Dr. Akua, how can folks reach you? Because, that's a whole different subject. They taught us how to read and write, but it's their languages. And I don't want to even go there. That's a whole different topic. But how can folks reach you if they want to get more information about how to improve their children or the teachers who are listening to us right now, how they can improve reaching our children and improve those test scores for us?
Sure. The best way to reach me is to go to readingrevolution.org. readingrevolution.org. And when you go there, you can click on parents for some of the special offers we have there. You can get a free demo. You can also do a speaker request. I'm actually going to be speaking in the DMV area on March 16th, and I'll get you some more information about that, Carl, as we get closer to it. But we have books, we have posters, and you can also email me from that website by clicking on speaker request. In addition to that, the Washington Post article is on there as well. You can just click on Dr. Akua in the news, and it has a Washington Post article, a Black Enterprise article. It has the special report that I referenced before called Dismantling the Preschool to Prison Pipeline Through Black Literacy and Education for Transformation. So everything that you need is at readingrevolution.org. If you want to email me directly, you can simply type in Dr. Akua at drakua.net. That's DRAKUA at DRAKUA.net.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Akua. Thank you for the work you do, especially looking after our young people. And thank you for the information you shared with us this morning.
All right. Thank you, Brother Carl. Appreciate you.
Dr. Akua out there down in Atlanta. All right, let's turn our attention now to Dr. Stephanie Myers from Black Women for Positive Change. Dr. Myers, thanks for being so patient with us.
Absolutely. It was wonderful to hear Dr. Akua's comments. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but we want to talk about violence or nonviolence. Let's talk about the philosophy of violence, because that's what Black Women for Positive Change, you guys have been coming up with techniques to reduce the violence in our community, because, nobody else seems to care about the violence, but you as a group, your group have been doing that. So let's talk about the philosophy of violence. Why is there a need for philosophy of nonviolence?
Well, Carl, just as Dr. Akua was talking about the legacy of our ancestors endured a lot of violence when they were brought over here under force into enslavement. And it's incredible, over 400 years, the number of people who died, the number of people who fought. So we owe our ancestors, we owe them to stop violence in America. We need to transform this country. Now, we know Black people built America with our ancestors' hands and hard labor and sweat. And now we have a country that is completely saturated with violence. And it's just completely unacceptable. When you consider that so far this year, Carl, over 5,000 people have died from gun violence. And we're just at the end of February. We're not even finished with February. 4,994 people dying of gun violence. And there have already been 46 mass shootings. And we saw the most recent one down in Kansas City last week after the Super Bowl game. And here we have to look at the news and see our community arrested because of some kind of fight that they had out in the street after the Kansas City march, after the parade. We have to transform this whole belief in violence. And really, Carl, it's something that we can do. We can change the culture of violence. And Black Women for Positive Change, we've been working on this in collaboration with our good brothers, men like you. We have to work together to focus on specific strategies.
All right, but Dr. Myers, violence is part of the DNA of this country. Rap Brown, Imam Jamil Abdul Al-Amin, known as Rap Brown, he said back in the days in the 60s, the violence is as American as cherry pie. It's part of the country's DNA. How are you going to change that?
Well, he's right, and we have to change that DNA. And America has changed drastically in many different categories already. We went from enslavement to freedom. Now, yes, we think we deserve more freedom through reparations, but at least we weren't in shackles. That was a major culture change. Women in this country have gone from being in the kitchen to now being CEOs, Vice President of the United States. That was a culture change, the change of the status of women. We've even seen the LGBTQ community go through major changes in their status and who they are. So we know that culture change is possible in America. And we know that Black people have the vision and the capacity to do it. So we have a slogan we use: we must change the culture of violence in America and the world. That needs to be our mission going forth in the 21st century. Now, people of color have a tremendous history of this. Indigenous people in America, the Native Americans, they have all kinds of strategies where the tribal communities come together and have peace and negotiation. In Africa, we have a long tradition of our tribes coming together as the chief would assemble the people to have a discussion about the problems in that tribe. We have strategies in Africa, in Black America, in Native America, in parts of Asian America, where people come together and they negotiate, they talk. They don't pick up a gun and start shooting each other. They sit down and work it out. That's the kind of model that we need. And we need people like Dr. Akua and other educators to work to help the children learn how to resolve conflicts. And, Carl, we have some outstanding organizations in the country that we partner with that are specialists in this whole issue of conflict resolution.
And hold that thought right there, Dr. Myers. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'll let you explain that conflict resolutions. Because you mentioned our children. Right now, there's a lot of violence around high school campuses. You know, all the high schools, not just in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, but just about all the high schools. What can you tell us? What can you suggest, or what would you recommend to get that violence to, if not recede, but replace it with something else, so that our children don't grow up in this spectacle of violence against each other. 14 after the top. They are running late. We got to take a short break, family. We're back in 6 minutes with Dr. Stephanie Myers from Black Women for Positive Change. You got a question for her? Reach out to us at 800-450-7876, and we'll take your phone calls in 4 minutes right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB, and also in the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. And good morning once again, family. 21 minutes after the top of the hour, Dr. Stephanie Myers from Black Women for Positive Change. We're talking about the violence, and their group is dedicated to stopping the violence. They're a nonviolence group. They have some new techniques they want to share with us. But before we left, she was talking about the conflict resolutions, especially when it comes to the violence that's surrounding our children around our schools. So, Dr. Myers, I'll let you explain that for us.
Yes, conflict resolution, anger management, these are techniques that people refer to as mediation, and helping people to learn how to disagree without escalation. We have to de-escalate the anger. When people encounter each other and they get into a fight, there are techniques that they can learn that can help them avoid getting killed. They can walk away from the fight. They can deliberately bring the tone of the fight down. They can interact with the person that they're disagreeing with and say, look, let's try to find some things to agree on. Conflict resolution is a skill. We should all be going to class to learn how to do it, because most of the gun violence deaths are occurring in the home. Domestic violence is one of the key reasons. Between domestic violence and suicide, this is where a lot of the gun violence is happening. So we know right at the kitchen table is where the conflict is beginning, where the anger is. It's in the house. It's between mom and dad. It's between the siblings. It's between the neighbors. So this is where we have to learn these tools. And there's a lot of information about conflict resolution. There are books that are available. It's online. We had our 12th annual Month of Nonviolence in October. And every year, Black Women for Positive Change, in collaboration with our partners, Every Town for Gun Safety, National Association for Community Mediation, Omega Psi-Phi, and a whole bunch of others, we pull together events all over the world to promote the concept of nonviolence, conflict resolution, and anger management. A lot of people don't know about these things. So we introduce to them, this is something you can do in your schools, in your churches, in your home. These are techniques that can work. And one example, Carl, that I really love is we had a young person in Pittsburgh who was in a peace circle. And that's the methodology that you can use in your schools and your home. It's called a peace circle. Everyone sits around together in a circle, and they begin to talk about what's on their mind, what's bothering them. Are they unhappy about something? Expressing themselves. And our young people don't get a chance to do that. They're expressing themselves through social media, but they should be expressing themselves to their mom, their dad, their uncles, their aunts, their grandparents. That's who they should learn how to express themselves to. So at any rate, this little boy in his family, his mom and dad used to fight all the time. And so after he'd been through the peace circles and his mom and dad started to fight, the little boy said, Mommy, Daddy, let's have a peace circle. And his mom and dad were so shocked, they sat down with him, the three of them, and they talked, and the fight went away. So we know this can work. This comes out of African, indigenous culture. We know that peace, love, and understanding and nonviolence, the way Dr. King taught it, we know that it works. We just have to do it.
But you know what, Dr. Myers, 26 after the top of the hour, usually when the flashpoint, when the violence, comes up, it's so fast you don't get it, sit down and, okay, should we talk this out? Because right away there's a reaction. How do you deal with that, the time element?
That's right. You're right. When the violence flashes, like it did in Kansas the other day, it's all over. And we see it every day here in the district. The gunshot wounds. It's prevention, Carl. And a lot of people have trouble believing in prevention. You have to focus on prevention before the gun gets pulled out of the backpack. Because once it's pulled out of the backpack, it's too late. So we have to get to all of our children. We need to make sure that we elect people who believe in violence prevention. And electing people, voting is critical right now. We've got to help our people understand. I don't care how angry you are, you don't feel you got what you needed, blah, blah, blah. We need to focus on which leaders at the federal, state, and local level are going to prevent violence, so that the peace circles that kids participate in high school, they do that every week at school or even every day. So when it's time to pull the gun out of the backpack, they don't do it because they don't have the gun in the backpack. We have to.
Well, let me jump in and ask you this, though. So why do you think this is not being discussed? It's a major problem. The violence is a major problem, not just in Washington, D.C., now with the drive-bys, any inner cities across this country and probably across this planet, too. There's a lot of violence. Why do you think, the politicians, the churches are not really picking up on this? Why aren't they trying to come up with solutions to stop this violence?
Life is full of things to manage: your work, your family, your plans, and your treatment. Consider Kesimpta, ofatumumab 20 milligram injection. You can take it yourself from the comfort of home. If you're ready for something different, ask your healthcare provider about Kesimpta and check out the details at kesimpta.com. Brought to you by Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation.
Welcome back to Dealing Together. First caller?
I bought 3 sweaters to get the 4th free.
Oh, you got fleeced. Next caller.
I traded my old Samsung at AT&T for a new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus and chose my plan.
That's not a bad deal.
It is not.
Our best smartphone deals, your choice of plan. Learn how to get the new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus with Galaxy AI on us with eligible trade-in. AT&T. Connecting changes everything.
Offers vary by device, subject to change. S24 plus 256 gigabyte offer available for a limited time. Terms and restrictions apply. See att.com/Samsung for details.
Well, there's several answers to that. Unfortunately, out of some of the European cultures, going back to the war-like mentality that we see today with Russia, Ukraine, the wars that America's been in the past, there is a belief system in parts of the world that violence is supreme. That is a belief system that is wrong and needs to change. Secondly, you've got the issue of wealth. People make money selling guns. And the gun lobbies have millions and millions of dollars that they use to lobby elected officials in Congress, at the state and local level. They're making such profits off of selling guns. In some of the alleys, Carl, in Chicago, we've heard that actually boxes of guns would be left in the alley because these white supremacists know if you give away guns or you make them inexpensive for our kids to get them, you increase the violence in that community. And every time they kill a black boy, they erase his DNA and all the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that he would have. I think the estimate is like 140 descendants can come from one black boy over 5 generations. So when you kill him and you make sure the gun is easy for him to buy and he can get the gun from somebody out in the streets, he gets a cheap gun and he goes and shoots somebody, you have erased a part of the black race in America. And you have got people today that that's what they want to see. What we see happening in parts of the world, we know that there are governments who will literally attack people and their communities and commit genocide. We've witnessed it. Black people have experienced it. We know what goes on. So, yes, why do people believe in violence? It's just a sickness that has to be changed. We have to change the culture. Now, black people have done such beautiful things through music, poetry, art. Look at the music transformation that black people are capable of doing. We have demonstrated it over and over again. The music can be a way that it helps people to look at the world in a different way. Our churches have to get involved. Carl, I was at a church one time, and I asked the minister, look, why don't you give sermons about violence here? And he said, you know what? Look at my congregation. He said about half of those families out there are experiencing violence, domestic violence. The parents are beating their kids. He said, if I get up here and talk about violence, I'm going to lose half of my congregation. Can you believe that? That's what he said. He didn't want to talk about violence prevention because his parishioners are victims of violence, and he didn't want to bring it up. And so we have seen situation after situation where people who are actually ministers or children of ministers have lived in violent homes, but nobody will say anything. The deacons won't say anything, the associate pastors, because you know this old saying, what happens in the house stays in the house. We got to change that attitude. No, what happens in the house belongs to the whole family and the whole community, and you cannot beat up your family members, and that's unacceptable.
30 after the top of the hour. You're speaking about black families, and some people say that what we see, the behavior that black families adopt is what they mimic from white families. Is there any truth to that? That they saw the violence maybe on TV or some of the shows, or they say that's what we do as black people, because we basically, the Pan-Africanist thought is that we don't know who we are, so we mimic white people, and we picked up that nasty habit of violence. Is that something you agree with or disagree with?
No, I absolutely agree with that. 400 years of enslavement, our ancestors endured violence day after day after day. The women endured rape day after day after day. Yes, we watch television. Our kids now can sit and watch violence on television all day, all night. Video games show people being decapitated in the video game. There are weapons and violence that are presented to our families through movies, television, online websites, video games. These kinds of tools we have to challenge. And that's why with our Black Women for Positive Change, in collaboration with our good brothers and with the organizations we work with, National Association for Community Mediation, 100 Fathers, Saint and Street Fighter Foundation, the National Black Nurses, we're trying to tell the country, look, violence is a public health issue. Violence is mental illness. Thousands of people committing suicide with guns is mental illness. So we have to get out there and vote for people who are going to change this scenario. Yes, the politicians don't like to talk about it because their money's coming from the gun lobbies. So we have to change all of that, and we can change it. We just have to feel more powerful. You know, right now, Carl, people are very depressed. They're empathetic. We have a lot of people saying, I ain't going to vote. Nah, it ain't me. I ain't going to do it. You've got people saying that they don't want to get involved in the community because they feel overwhelmed. We can't do that, folks. We have got to get involved. If you only have one peace circle at your kitchen table with your grandkids, that's good enough. If you have a peace circle in your backyard with the children who live in your neighborhood and you learn how to facilitate that and how to help them heal, that's good enough. Have peace circles at your churches, but we must demand, one of our goals for Black Women for Positive Change is we'd like to see every school in the country teaching peace circles and peace philosophies. And fortunately, Carl, we do have a president of the United States right now who created the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. We actually have a federal office dedicated to this. And Black Women for Positive Change is meeting with them and talking with them about ideas. There's a very talented African-American brother, Mayor Stephen Benjamin, who is head of this office. He knows all about the violence. He's worked with the prisons. He's worked with returning citizens. So we do have a team of people now in place. What we need is the people to get out, vote, organize peace circles, raise money. We can do this.
All right. Hold that thought right there, Dr. Myers. We've got to take a short break. And Money Mike wants to speak to you when we come back. I'm glad you put it on the national level, too, because we've got one party that says that if they don't win, there's going to be a revolution. They claim what they did on January 6th was just a tea party. That's just the start of it. So I wanted, how can we affect change and do it, knowing that they've already said what they're going to do if they don't win the next election? Family, you want to join this conversation with Dr. Stephanie Myers from Black Women for Positive Change? Hit us up at 800-450-7876. We'll take your phone calls in 4 minutes right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. And good morning once again, family, and thanks for sticking with us all morning long. Our guest is Dr. Stephanie Myers. We're talking about nonviolence and also talking about conflict resolution, how to stop the violence in our community. Before we left, we got a call from Brother Haki in Baltimore. So, Dr. Myers, I'm going to let you respond to what Brother Haki said.
Well, Brother Haki was talking about exposing kids and taking them on trips down in the South, and he's absolutely right. The exposure that we can provide our young people to new knowledge and opportunities is the best alternative to violence that there is. Our young people are violent and angry because they don't see a vision of the future. And we're going to be having our 13th annual Month of Nonviolence next fall. So there's plenty of time for all of your listeners to work with the young people in your family, work with the young people in your community, plan a webinar, plan an activity that can go on during the month of nonviolence in next fall where they can learn about other people in other countries. This year we had people from the Ivory Coast, Jamaica, Nigeria. We had young people all through the Ivory Coast that were doing peace circles and talking about anger management and conflict resolution. So we have relationships now where young people from Baltimore or Los Angeles or Alabama can have an online live conversation with kids from Ivory Coast and Kenya about peace. Wouldn't that be exciting? And these are things that our organizations, our churches can do. So we invite everyone to please come to our website, blackwomenforpositivechange.org. You can join the organization if you wish to pay dues. We'd love to have you. You can also go on our blog and put up the name of your organization, your email, and we will keep you informed about things in the future. So when you go to the website, you'll see a link that says blog, and you can go onto that blog and express yourself. Tell us what you think about what we're doing, what you want.
Right. I mean, before you go,
and
Dr.
how we
Myers.
can contact you.
Right. I hate to interrupt. We're racing the clock here. Danielle is calling in for you. She's in Baltimore on line 2. Good morning, Danielle.
Good morning. How's everyone? Good morning, Dr. Myers. Good morning, Mr. Nelson. I just want to say that everything that Dr. Myers has just been so right on point. I'm the chair for the Baltimore County Black Women for Positive Change, and Haki, a good friend of mine, right on point. He's very instrumental in working with the young people. And like Dr. Myers stated, we definitely need to have all for our young people. We used to have rec centers and parks open. There's money that comes down from the federal government that goes to our different states and jurisdictions. Let's make sure that money is being put in the right place. The schools used to have extra activities where the kids could learn. As far as job opportunities, the CTE programs, let's make sure in our areas where our schools for our Black and brown kids that they have these HVAC training sessions or how to build cars, automotive, so they can still make 6 and 7 figures in a job, because everyone don't want to go to college, and it costs so much money. Let's listen to the kids, listen to what they have to say. There used to be a step and step program with the federal government, and that program would allow the federal government and some state agencies to hire these children while they're in school, because sometimes when they're juniors and seniors in school, they may only have 1 or 2 classes. And when they get out of school early, what do they have to do? What do they have to turn to? And let's have, like Dr. Myers mentioned, some listening sessions so that we can hear what the kids want and what they need. A lot of times the parents are so busy working 2 or 3 jobs, trying to keep these nice homes and these cars and give the kids what they want. But then when it's time for them to get out into the world, what do they have? So we need to also include them in the decision-making process for voting. If we don't get out here and vote for the right people in office to make sure that we have these things we need. And like Dr. Myers mentioned earlier, while it is our, Caucasian counterparts and other individuals, it is also us at the demise of us. I sat in on a meeting last night of some Democrats. You wouldn't even think we're here to save our democracy, because there was so much disdain and disrespect for the Black leadership that was there. But most of the people who were there disrespecting them were put in those positions by some of our Black leadership, some of our Black legislators. So we have to make sure we put the right people in office, follow how they vote, follow what they're doing, and who's on their team, and who really supports our communities.
All right, Dr. Myers.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree with everything. And Danielle is a wonderful example of a leader in Baltimore. We need Danielle Smiths all over this country. We need women and men who are willing to spend the time she spends going to community agencies, having her voice heard. She's a role model for young people and adults. So thank you, Danielle, for all the work that you do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Danielle. And thank you, Dr. Myers. So, Dr. Myers, one more time, how can folks reach you?
Okay. Our website is blackwomenforpositivechange.org. People can come on the site, go to the blog, put your name up, your email, any comments you want to make, and you can contact us there. Our email is it's BKWomen with the number 4, poschange@gmail.com. I know that's kind of long. BKWomen with the number 4, poschange@gmail.com. That's our email address. So, Carl, thank you so much for all you do. The speakers you have on your program are the true intellectual leaders of the world. And I admire so much the way that you're able to bring this knowledge to us and the support that you provide. We've worked with you now for years, and you are a true example of the kind of media leader that we need all over the world. So thank you so much.
And thank you for those kind words. Thank you, Dr. Myers. And thank you for what you do in your group, Black Women for Positive Change, as well. All right, family, we're going to keep rolling. A. Peter Bailey is joining us. Peter, good morning.
Good morning, Carl. How are you doing, man?
Excellent. It's funny, we're talking about violence, and now we're talking about nonviolence, and we're going to talk about Brother Malcolm and his end and what he thought about violence. So before we talk, you take us back, 59 years ago? Before you do that, though, what was Malcolm's thought about violence?
He didn't believe in violence. For a black person in America to be going around talking about black folks, would have been suicidal. He believed in self-defense. He believed that as long as people did not mess with you, you did not mess with them. But if they attacked you, physically attacked you, and beat you or killed you, then you had every right to defend yourself. And that's what he always advocated. Now, of course, the way this was reported in the press, in almost 99% in the white press, and even too often in the black press, was that he was advocating violence. and he never.
Yeah, he had that
advocated
tag. How did he get that reputation though? Because people thought that I guess with the comparison with Dr. King, Dr. King was a pacifist, and so people thought, and Malcolm was the antagonist. How did he get that? How did those reputations come? Was that the media built that up?
Because if someone comes into a black community and they start abusing people and beating people and harming people, he was saying that black people had the right to defend themselves. Well, the way this country was said, that was violence, because they had not swallowed it really, but they found it very effective. This whole kind of nonviolent thing that became like their tone for doing everything. And anybody black who did not advocate that became, quote unquote, an advocate of violence. If you did not believe in allowing, white supremacists and racists to come to your community and abuse people and violate people, and even sometimes kill people, then if you did not accept that, then you were always depicted as a believer in violence. And unfortunately, black people began to accept that.
Peter, take us back. How did you meet Brother Malcolm?
Life is full of things to manage: your work, your family, your plans, and your treatment. Consider Kesimpta, ofatumumab 20 milligram injection. You can take it yourself from the comfort of home. If you're ready for something different, ask your healthcare provider about Kesimpta and check out the details at kesimpta.com. Brought to you by Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation.
Welcome back to Dealing Together. First caller?
I bought 3 sweaters to get the 4th free.
Oh, you got fleeced. Next caller.
I traded my old Samsung at AT&T for a new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus and chose my plan.
That's not a bad deal.
It is not.
Our best smartphone deals, your choice of plan. Learn how to get the new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus with Galaxy AI on us with eligible trade-in. AT&T. Connecting changes everything.
Offers vary by device, subject to change. S24 plus 256 gigabyte offer available for a limited time. Terms and restrictions apply. See att.com/Samsung for details.
I met Brother Malcolm in the summer of 1962. I had just moved to Harlem and moved in on a Friday, and on Saturday morning, instead of unpacking, a friend who had helped me move, we decided we were going to walk down to 125th Street. Now, I must tell you, brother, at that time, I kind of had ideas about Harlem that everybody else had, because I had believed all the, even like you might get shot just walking the streets. You know what I mean? I really and truly believed that in Harlem was dangerous. The only reason I moved in was because I was able to get an apartment, 8 rooms for $56 a month, because of the rent control thing. And so I said, hey, with that, I'll take my chances. So we moved in. We walked down from 142nd Street. It was on 142nd Street down to 125th, and then we decided to go on to 116th. We got down to 116th. We saw a crowd gathering. And we say, oh, well, what is going on? And they said, Malcolm X is going to speak. Now, at that time, I'd heard of him. And, of course, I had heard vaguely. And, of course, I had heard the things. He believed in violence. He talked about going around shooting, killing white folks and all that kind of stuff. I had heard that. And so I kind of, had not been very involved of following him in any kind of way. But I said to my friend, I said, let's see what he got to say. And the brother spoke for almost 3 hours that afternoon. It was an afternoon. Out on the streets on 116th Street, right across the street from the Nation of Islam temple. And by the time he finished, I was a Malcolmite, because I had never heard in my life anyone describe the system, the United States system, with more clarity and than he did that day. And he spent at least 40 minutes of that talking about psychological warfare. Now, that was something I had heard of kind of vaguely, but I had never heard it with the depth that he put it. And so that was my first time hearing him speak. I did not meet him until later, when after he left the Nation of Islam, and I had a friend. After I heard him speak that first time, wherever he spoke in the New York area, I went and I listened. And he talked about books and articles, and I tried to find those things and read them. And so I was working that time at Time Inc. as an editorial reference. They call me editorial reference clerk. I had to read papers and take out the names of people for their files. And then I had and with the Rockefeller Center right there in New York. So in Rockefeller Center, there are a lot of restaurants kind of underground in the basement level, and I used to go down there and eat a lot. And I was one day there was a young lady there, and she and I had seen each other several times. We never just spoke. We didn't know each other. But one time we happened to be at the same table, and we began to talk. And then we did that for a couple of months. And then one day she said to me, "How would you like to be a part of a new Black nationalist organization?" I said, "Most definitely." And she said, "Well, I'll tell you what time, where to meet, and what time, and don't ask no questions." So I said, "Okay." She told me the place to meet. That Saturday morning, I was up there, and I walked into the room, and I saw like Dr. John Henry Clark. I saw John Oliver Killers, because I saw my friend and her roommate, but about 7, 8 other people that I did not know. And we were all sitting around talking, and nobody talking about different things about what was going on at the time. And after I'd been there maybe about 20 minutes, I guess it was, Brother Malcolm walked in. It wasn't until he walked through that door that I found out that I was going to be a part of a new organization with Brother Malcolm. And he came in and introduced himself to us, and we introduced ourselves to him. And that was the beginning of the formation of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. And that's how I met Brother Malcolm.
Wow, what a story. Hold that thought right there. Norman in Toronto, Canada wants to talk to you as well, but we've got to take a short break. We're coming back, and we'll take us down memory lane 59 years ago. Our guest is A. Peter Bailey. He's a journalist, a professor. He was at the Audubon Ballroom. He was one of the last persons to speak to Brother Malcolm before his assassination. You want to join this conversation with him? Reach out to us at 800-450-7876. We'll take your phone calls in 4 minutes right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. And good morning, family. We're on with Dr. Stephanie Myers for Black Women for Positive Change. We're talking about violence and nonviolence and how to stop it. Also, conflict resolution as well. Before we go back to it, let me just remind you, coming up later this morning, we're going to speak with journalist A. Peter Bailey. Peter was one of the last persons to speak with Brother Malcolm 59 years ago today. He was at the Audubon Ballroom before Malcolm took the stage. He's going to take us back to that day in 1965. And also tomorrow, Brother Ishmael Muhammad will join us. Brother Ishmael is one of Elijah Muhammad's sons, and he's going to preview this weekend's Savior's Day event that's going to take place in Detroit. Also, chematologist and grill, Brother Ashwa Kwesi, the master teacher, along with his wife, Mary Kwesi, will join us tomorrow. You know, they talk about the African origin of civilization, and they also tell us to know thyself. This is part of the problem. We don't know who we are, and so people can come up and tell us that we are this and we are that, and we're all confused. So anyway, they're going to work that out for us tomorrow. So if you're in Baltimore, make sure your radio's locked in real tight on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. As I mentioned, Money Mike has been holding for us. He's on line 2. He's calling from Baltimore. Wants to speak with Dr. Myers. Money Mike, good morning.
Dr. Myers.
Good morning.
Dr. Myers, good morning, ma'am. Dr. Myers, you mentioned the gun lobby 2 or 3 times. Could you explain to us what a lobby is, and how does the gun lobby use its power or its influence to affect our politicians?
Okay, great question. Lobbying in America is a organization mechanism where companies and individuals can pool their money, and they can create a political action committee or a lobbying organization, and they pool their money and they go up to elected officials or people running for office, and they invest and donate to their campaigns. So they might say, okay, we're going to give you $50,000. You're running for mayor, or you're running for Congress, or you're running for president. We're going to give you a lot of money, and in exchange for this money, we want you to go up there and support the ownership of guns. We want you to support that young people can own guns, and that people can have guns in there with no restrictions, and they don't need licenses. So lobbying means influence. People with wealth and money pay money to politicians to influence their vote. And so we have to, if we don't have the money, but we do have numbers, so we can lobby by turning out the vote. So an elected official has to win by votes, not money. So if you've got 100,000 people voting in an election, and you can get 80,000 of them to vote for the man or woman who is against gun violence, then you can beat the lobby. Does that answer
we
your
don't
question?
hold our but we don't hold our elected officials accountable. So, and lobbying, it's a legal form of bribery. So, I mean, unless we learn to get on the game, and I'm not going to say all blacks or all African Americans don't understand the power and the influence of money, but I study money, and I understand what it's done to us and to limit our political action. And so for years, where's the black lobbying group? Where's the black lobbying organization, and why doesn't it exist? Why don't anybody come to us and say, I don't know of any black lobby that has financial influence? None. And it's been a game that's been played on African Americans.
Money Mike, you're the one. You're telling us the truth. We need you and your other money brothers and sisters around the country to form this black lobby. It's something that we have to do. We can't expect someone else to do it for us. You're right. You research money. I hear you on Carl's wonderful show all the time talking. Okay, it's time for us to get busy. We can't just talk about stuff now. We have to do it.
Dr. Myers, I agree with you, but I've been at this for 40 years trying to teach people about money and investing, and it's like they're scared. They don't understand wealth. They don't want it. They want to just be status quo. So I'm going to keep on trying, but it's a tough battle, I'm going to tell you.
Well, thank you for the work you do, and I'll be looking forward to hearing about your lobby organization. Creative.
Mike, don't give up on us. Don't give up on us. Sometimes you got to be patient with our folks because you're absolutely right what you're saying, but you just got to be patient. What you're saying is correct. We got to get that message out. We got to keep repeating it until our folks understand it. And Dr. Myers is right. Because instead of talking about, we've got to do it. So, Money Mike, thank you for what you do, and thank you for bringing that up about the lobbyist. All right, family, we continue at 16 away from the top there. Marvin's also in Baltimore. He's on line 3. Marvin, good morning. You're on with Dr. Myers.
How you doing, Dr. Myers and Carl? How y'all doing this morning?
All right, thank you.
What I wanted to say is that, I mean, you got Mike was just talking about the law and everything about how they make them guys push them on the street, the black people getting them. I mean, that's just what part of that situation do the black people do? Because, I mean, I'll put it to you like this. I got a buddy of mine, a real good friend of mine named Joe. Joe raised his kids up. They well-mannered. They do everything, right. And they're real good kids. And they didn't be big kids. They ain't out the street shooting guns and worrying about how the guns getting in there and all of that. So, see, I feel as though is that the parents got to put the work in. You know what I mean? We go to everybody else. We're going to the parents. It should be mandatory that if you have a kid, you need to raise that kid right. And how you raise it right, if you go to school, you go to school with him. If you're going to hang out on the corner, you hang out on the corner with them. That can be solved quick. But black people don't want to put their work in. You see what I'm saying? And if we keep on asking for this, the help. When they come with the help, you don't want that. But then you want this to happen. You want this person to go talk for them. This and that. We ain't doing it, but forgive me, we bullcrapping. That's what we're doing about our own race. People, listen, it just needs to simply be black people need to go and hang on the corners with their kids and go to school with them. That's it. And you'll solve that problem. I thank y'all.
All right, thanks, Marvin.
Well, you're
Dr. Myers?
Right. Yeah. Yes, you're absolutely right. A couple of years ago, I was in Pittsburgh at a high school. There were about 500 kids in the audience, and I asked the kids, why are you so upset? Why are you so mad? Why are you joining gangs? Why are you fighting? One of the young men, 16-year-old, handsome young brother, stood up and said, we're upset because our parents aren't giving us any dreams. We're upset because we're not getting exposure to anything. No one is taking us on travel. We're not seeing anything. We have no dreams. So you're absolutely right. The parents, the mentors, the adults, the teachers, the ministers, we have to give our kids dreams. Now, one of our themes with Black Women for Positive Change is opportunities are alternatives to violence. Opportunities. It is our job as the parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts of these kids to give them opportunities. Now, what do I mean? Okay, today in 2024, artificial intelligence, robots, all kinds of electronics, people going to space, all kinds of things are going on. Are our kids learning this? Do they know about it? Are we introducing our kids to futuristic technologies? No. Our kids are going to low-level public schools and hardly learning how to read, which is why the brother that was on early, Brother Akua, is having to step in. We have to find industries that are going to be growth industries in the future, and we have to teach our kids what these industries are so they can decide what they want to be. The young man said, we don't have any dreams. Okay, our children deserve the dreams of the ancestors who worked in the fields and picked cottons and dreamed of a better day. We are responsible for creating that better day through opportunities and stopping violence.
But Dr. Myers, you're 12 away from the topic. How are we going to compete as parents, compete with the internet? How are we going to compete with the entertainment industry that's pumping all this negative energy into our children's minds? How do we compete with that?
Alternatives. We created a separate industry, just like we have an industry promoting violence and hip-hop and rap and going, there's some language that's not good. We've got to go to the hip-hoppers and the rappers. We've got to go to the top athletes. We have to go to the top entertainers, Usher and Patrick Mahomes with the Kansas City Chiefs. We have to go to them and say, look, we want to create a new future, and you guys control the way our young people think. So we want you. We have to reward them. We have to make it worth their while to do the right thing. See, the bad people are making it worth their while to do the wrong thing. We're not making it worth their while to do the right thing. And one other thing I wanted to mention, Carl, you talked about how the people are now coming against us with all the hate and the racism and January 6th and all that. Something else we have to think about doing is educating ignorant white supremacists about their own ancestry. A lot of these ignorant people out there on January 6th don't realize that their ancestors came here as poor, white, indentured servants. They were just a step away from being enslaved. They're ignorant. They don't know their own history, and they don't know they're being used. You have got billionaires who are using these trailer park, ignorant white people thinking that we're their enemy. We're not the enemy. The enemy are the billionaires who are taking advantage of them. So as much as I hate to say it, we have to re-educate the ignorant white supremacists who think that black people accomplishing things is their enemy. We're not the enemy. We want to build a country for this nation where black people are able to be in positions of power, like our Fannie Willis and the different elected officials that we see, the district attorneys. And I'm so proud of these black leaders we have, Ketanji on the Supreme Court, Kamala in the White House. We have to show them that the decisions our leaders make are going to be better for their children than the stupid decisions that these white supremacist racists are making. So we have to be willing to kind of go across the lines and go back and forth.
10 away from the topic, I got a tweet question for you, but Brother Hakeem's joining us. He's also in Baltimore. He's on line 2. Good morning, Brother Hakeem. You're on with Dr. Myers.
Yes. Good morning, Dr. Myers. Good to hear you. One of the good brothers for the positive Black Women for Positive Change. Good to hear you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Carl. And I appreciate you. You mentioned how young people, the young man that stood up and said, we're not, giving us hope and dreams. We're not seeing anything. And, you hit it right on the nail. And that's actually what one of my, my initiatives on the President of Teaching Artists Institute as well. And, we've taken, some small amounts to Africa, but also for the past 2 years, we took groups through 10 different states throughout the South on the Freedom Rise tour, mimicking what the Corps and the other Freedom Riders did during the 60s and early 50s as well. And so, just having young people seeing different historical context, to put a context to where they actually are in this time, it opens up eyes of opportunity and seeing different people as well as mixing and having conversations with different young people. But I just wanted to mention this, and you mentioned about lobbying. I'm on the board of the Maryland Black Caucus Foundation, not the Black Caucus, but the foundation. And I've seen, for instance, what in the D.C. area, what the Congressional Black Caucus has done, but also what the foundation has done with education. And many people see, us, for instance, as an opportunity to really, the mission is not necessarily to be a lobbying arm, but, in terms of education, we have, really connected to some of the black officials, but I think it's a beginning, and working with, other groups, we can begin to build a movement. So I just want to, keep you encouraged, but what do you think in terms of, taking young people on college tours and freedom rides and things like this to expand bus tours as well? So thank you, Carl, and I'll just take it off there. Thank you, Dr. Myers, always.
All right. I'll tell you what, Dr. Myers, I'll let you respond after this short break. We got coming up on a short break. I'll let you respond to what Brother Haki has said when we get back. Family, you want to join us? It's 6 minutes away from the top of the hour with Dr. Stephanie Myers. We'll be back in 4 minutes. Question and talking about the violence in our community. What are your thoughts? 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls in 4 minutes, as I mentioned, right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB, and also in the DMV. We're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. And good morning, family, and thanks for rolling with us 20 minutes after the top of the hour with A. Peter Bailey. Peter was one of the last persons to speak to Brother Malcolm the afternoon or the evening, actually, when he was gunned down at the Audubon Ballroom in Manhattan. That was 59 years ago. Peter's going to take us down that memory lane. But before we do that, let's go to Toronto, Canada. Norman's waiting for us on line one. Good morning, Norman. Is Norman there on line one? I think Norman left us. All right, Peter. So then you met Malcolm. So it started you were part of that organization. What did that organization? Why was it formed? Why did Malcolm form that organization?
The organization was called the Organization of Afro-American Unity, and that's what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be an organization in which black people could join, no matter what your religion was, what your political beliefs were, what your education, anything that you had. It was called an Organization of Afro-American Unity, because it was the position of Brother Malcolm and of our organization that we needed more unity in this society. This does not mean that we all had to think exactly alike on every single issue, but it meant that we would be close to each other and work with each other. In fact, to show you, brother, how Brother Malcolm believed that so strongly, he advocated that when he was still in the Nation of Islam. He wrote a letter in 1963 to Dr. King and the head of the NAACP and the Urban League and the CORE and those organizations. And he said to them, if communist Khrushchev and communistic Khrushchev and capitalistic Kennedy can get together on certain issues that are when they be regarded as a threat to them, both of them, or all of them, or white folks in general, then why can't we do the same thing? And stop being so. He said, I'm inviting you, those people. They were having a Nation of Islam rally. He said, I'm inviting you all to attend. You can present your positions. You'll be treated with respect. I guarantee you'll be treated with respect. And we will listen to what you have to say. Now, he wrote that in 1963 when he was still in the Nation. And the Nation attitude was like, if you don't join the Nation, then you can't be a part of what we're doing. And that was many other black organizations had the same attitude. So Brother Malcolm had a long time belief in the absolute necessity of unity. And so when he formed this new organization, it was called the Organization of Afro-American Unity, OAAU.
Was it all black? Were there any whites, any Asians involved in the organization?
There were no whites involved. There were Asians. They did not become members, but they were supporters of the organization. And there was an Asian American group that supported what Brother Malcolm was doing. And they created an organization that they tried to make similar to his for people of Asian descent. As far as I know, in fact, I'm pretty certain there were no white members of the organization. There might have been some whites, who supported it, but they did it very, very quietly if they did, and I was not aware of them. But it was an organization designed for people of African descent, and no matter what you were, in other words, Brother Malcolm's position was he believed strongly in Pan-Africanism. So he didn't want you to be a Muslim Pan-Africanist, a Christian Pan-Africanist, a Nigerian Pan-Africanist, an African-American Pan-Africanist, and a Ghanaian Pan-Africanist. He wanted you to be a Pan-Africanist Muslim, a Pan-Africanist Christian, a Pan-Africanist Nigerian, a Pan-Africanist Ghanaian. Pan-Africanism was supposed to be the first identity, and that was keep us unified. And that's what he strongly believed in.
Yeah. 24 after the top. Reparations. Did he talk about reparations?
Life is full of things to manage: your work, your family, your plans, and your treatment. Consider Kesimpta, ofatumumab 20 milligram injection. You can take it yourself from the comfort of home. If you're ready for something different, ask your healthcare provider about Kesimpta and check out the details at kesimpta.com. Brought to you by Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation.
Welcome back to Dealing Together. First caller?
I bought 3 sweaters to get the 4th free.
Oh, you got fleeced. Next caller.
I traded my old Samsung at AT&T for a new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus and shows my plan.
That's not a bad deal.
It is not.
Our best smartphone deals, your choice of plan. Learn how to get the new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus with Galaxy AI on us with eligible trade-in. AT&T. Connecting changes everything.
Offers vary by device, subject to change. S24 plus 256 gigabyte offer available for a limited time. Terms and restrictions apply. See att.com/Samsung for details.
I never heard him talk about it directly, but that was, he always said that this government owed us. In fact, he was going to go to the United, when he was ready to go, talking about going to the United Nations. That was one of the things that he was going to take with him, that they owed us for 200, almost 300 years of slavery, that the descendants of the slaves were owed economic returns from the federal government of the United States.
I ask you this question because growing up, in my household, family was always, supporting Dr. King. Well, and for me, it was Brother Malcolm. It was this sort of in the household we'd have these debates, and with my dad and my mom about Brother Malcolm and what he was doing, and they thought he was in too much of a hurry. That's how they put it. He's got to be more patient. Dr. King's on the right road. I'm trying to figure out if that was a sense in the black community back then, and if so, did Malcolm pick up on that?
Of course, he recognized that was what was going on, and that's why he wanted to have a Pan-Africanist organization. If you believed in Pan-Africanism, and yet you wanted to do this particular thing, that was fine. But as long as you believed in Pan-Africanism, the necessity of black unity, that was the important thing. The absolute important thing, that we had to work together. And as I said before, Brother Malcolm was not unintelligent enough to think that everybody was going to agree on every single issue at every single time. But you would be dealing with it within the terms of unity, just like everybody else. That's what this country does. The Democrats and the Republicans and all these other different groups in this country, they argue with each other. But when they deal with somebody else, they deal as Americans. They don't deal as Democrats and Republicans and this, that, and that. They deal as Americans. And he felt as though people of African descent should do the exact same thing.
Right, they stay on code, and that's what
we would deal with Africa. We would consider Pan-Africanism, the identity with people of African descent around the world, as our first identity.
Right. I got a tweet question for you. A tweeter said, "Would Malcolm be happy with the current direction of the leadership, black leadership today?"
Absolutely not, because they don't talk about leadership. They don't talk about unity. They don't talk about economics. They put more emphasis. They put all that emphasis on politics. And Brother Malcolm taught us that you will never have political power without economic power. You may have a limited degree of political influence, but you will never have political power in this society without economic power. And so he felt as though we should make more effective use of our collective economics. And he was not the only one who believed. There have been other people who believe that. Who have Marcus Garvey, of course, believed that same thing, and other major black leaders have believed that kind of thing. But we always want to put everything on politics. Everything on politics.
You know what? Let me jump in here for a second, though. At 28 after the top of the hour, because
we're still doing that today.
You mentioned
you practically never hear black political figures in this country, even ones who are like got big names and everything. You practically never hear them talk about more effective use of our collective economics. Never.
Right. I'll tell you what, I'll hold my question for a second here. 28 after the top there. Bob in Buffalo's got a question for you. He's on line one. Good morning, Bob.
We're heading in the right direction.
All right, Bob, you have a good question? I don't think
sir.
Bob's ready for us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
A question for Peter Bailey. Go ahead, please.
Yes, my brother. I believe that Malcolm was right on track in terms of taking it to the United Nations, and it shocks me that no one has picked up that baton since then. And should we pick up that baton to take our grievances to the United Nations, including reparations? It amazes me no one has picked up that baton because it seems such a clear-cut direction for us.
All right. Thank you, Bob in Buffalo. Peter, do you think that what happened to Malcolm is that's why no one else has sort of picked up the baton that he started?
There's been no real, to me, in the last 50 years, 55 years, there has been no one who has really had a strong push for unity, and not some kind of, good fellow unity, but a serious unity where we got together as a group of people and recognized our collective, the need for us to be collectively aware of what is going on in this country. And we did in all the different arenas, whether it was in health, culture, economics, politics, education, technology, communications, that we understand that we need to have our own positions in these issues, and then we had to deal with other people, of course, not only in the United States but around the world. But we've dealt with it from a sense of togetherness, and we have not done it to this day. We have not done it yet since in the last. Since the assassination of Brother Malcolm. Dr. King believed in unity. I got a quote by Dr. King in his book, in his last book, where he says, we have been oppressed as a group, and we must overcome that oppression as a group.
All right, hold that thought right there. 30 minutes after the top there, Peter. Peter, do us a favor now. Take us back 59 years ago today. What day was it? We take us back to the Audubon Ballroom? What day was it and what time was it?
It was February 21st, 1965, and we were having getting ready. We know that's what we held our meetings and rallies. It was in the Audubon Ballroom, which is up on 168th Street in Manhattan, up near Columbia, up near where Columbia University is, and Columbia University Hospital. Well, way above Columbia University, but up where Columbia University Hospital was. And so it was called the Audubon Ballroom. And that's where we had our organizational meetings. And on that particular day, on February 21st, Brother Malcolm was going to be speaking at the rally and kind of give because he had been traveling abroad quite a bit, and he was going to kind of give a real speech about what he had been doing abroad and why he felt so strongly about the need for Black people to develop a more Pan-Africanist type of attitude when dealing with people around Black people around the world, especially those on the continent of Africa. So when he came in that day, I was the editor of the organization's newsletter. We had a newsletter that we called The Blacklash, and I was the editor of the newsletter. And the previous weekend, his home had been firebombed. So I had written a news release to be distributed the next day at the rally the next day in response to the firebombing. When Brother Malcolm came into the office that Saturday, I showed it to him. And when he read it, he said, "Brother Peter, you cannot distribute this." Because there's one thing Brother Malcolm understood, brother. He did not want us to get in trouble because of something we read. I mean, because of something we wrote, something that we said. He knew how to say things and write things where they could not take you into court on it. You could be very clear, but you could not put it in a way. So he said that so I took those and put them off to the side and did not take them in that Saturday. And so when he did come in that Saturday, I was already at the Audubon Ballroom. I was there, it had a huge ballroom. Then it had a kind of a small entrance group, and to the right of the entrance group was a small office. And I was sitting there in this place.
Right, and hold that thought right there, Peter. We got to take our last break, and we come back. We find you sitting at the outside of the main ballroom of the Audubon Ballroom family. We use your radio vision and watch with your ears as Peter takes us back 59 years ago, the assassination of Malcolm X. What are your thoughts? 800-450-7876 will get you in. We'll take your phone calls in 4 minutes right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB and also in the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power.
Life is full of things to manage. Your work, your family, your plans, and your treatment. Consider Kesimpta, ofatumumab 20 milligram injection. You can take it yourself from the comfort of home. If you're ready for something different, ask your healthcare provider about Kesimpta and check out the details at kesimpta.com. Brought to you by Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation.
Welcome back to Dealing Together. First caller?
I bought 3 sweaters to get the 4th free.
Oh, you got fleeced. Next caller?
I traded my old Samsung at AT&T for a new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus and chose my plan.
That's not a bad deal.
It is not.
Our best smartphone deals, your choice of plan. Learn how to get the new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus with Galaxy AI on us with eligible trade-in. AT&T. Connecting changes everything.
Offers vary by device, subject to change. S24 plus 256 gigabyte offer available for a limited time. Terms and restrictions apply. See att.com/Samsung for details.
And thank you, family. Thank you for staying with us this morning. 23 minutes away from the top of the hour. We're going down memory lane with A. Peter Bailey. Peter is a professor, a journalist. He was at the Audubon Ballroom, as he mentioned, 59 years ago, the assassination of Brother Malcolm X. Before we go back to the elements, to remind you, coming up tomorrow, we're going to speak with Brother Ishmael Muhammad. He's one of Elijah Muhammad's sons. He's going to preview this weekend Savior Day event that's taking place in Detroit. Also, chematologists and griots are going to join us. Brother Ashra Kwesi, the master teacher, along with Mary Kwesi. They're going to be here as well. So if you are in Baltimore, make sure your radio's locked in real tight on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. All right, Peter, we left off. You were sitting outside of the main ballroom at the Audubon Ballroom.
Yes, there's the entrance area is very small. And right to the right of the entrance area is the restrooms, and right directly in front of in front of the place where I was sitting is the office for the building. And so I was sitting there waiting, and the reason I was back there, brother, is that I had been backstage when Brother Malcolm came in, and I thought it's very important that I say this too. When Brother Malcolm came in that Sunday, and I was sitting there when he came in, and he said, "Brother Peter, when you get a chance, come backstage. I'd like to talk to you." So I said, "Okay." And about 5 or 6 minutes later, I went backstage, and now here's this brother. His home the previous week had been firebombed. He'd been under all this pressure. You know why he wanted me to come backstage? Because I had written a news release about the firebombing of his home, but evidently I had said something in it where they could get us, get us on, like take us to court, and when they might have a weak case, but it keep us tied up in the courts, spending time and money fighting it. So he asked me to not distribute the newsletter. So I had said okay, but that Sunday, that was on Saturday. So when I got backstage, and despite all the pressure he was under, he said, "Brother Peter, I know you put a lot of work in that newsletter. I hope you understand why I asked you to not distribute it." And I said to myself, "Brother, I understood. But I always tell people, now this brother's under all this pressure, and he's concerned about my feelings. This is the kind of person that he was. And so we talked about, I showed him an article that I'd gotten out of I think it was the New York Times a day about some group called the Deacons for Defense and Justice being formed down in Louisiana, I think it was. I showed him a copy of that article. These were black folks, and they were going to start defending themselves from the white supremacists when they came into the black community. They were going to start defending themselves. I think they call themselves the Deacons for Defense and Justice. So I showed him that article, and he read it, and he said, "Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good." And after a few minutes, his home had been firebombed, so there was a pastor coming in, a preacher coming in, who was going to make an appeal for clothing for his children. So he asked those of us backstage, which one of us knew what he looked like. I said, well, I don't know him, but I know what he looks like because I've seen him on television and everything. So he asked me to go out front and wait on him, and then when he came in, to bring him backstage. That's why I was sitting there. And while I was sitting there facing the door, waiting for him to come in, and I heard shots. I heard Brother Malcolm say, "Assalamu alaikum." Then I heard shots. And myself and one other person that was out there, I think it was a couple of people out there, we ran into the bathroom, which was off to the right, because we thought the shots were right there, up there where we were, because they sounded so clearly. We thought they were up there near where we were. So when they stopped, I went into the Audubon ballroom, and I saw chairs overturned and people laying on the floor. People were screaming and crying. And I ran down and jumped up on stage, and I saw Brother Malcolm on the stage with his all these his shirt and everything ripped, and these holes in his body. I actually leaned over. I didn't touch him, but because I didn't know what to do. I would never have tried to do anything because I didn't know what to do in a situation like that. I just looked, and the brothers found and went across the street to Columbia University Hospital. They got a stretcher. No doctor from the hospital came over to the Audubon. So the brothers just grabbed the stretcher and took the stretcher, one of those rolling stretchers, and they came back and they put another Brother Malcolm on the stretcher and took him across the street to Columbia University Hospital. And after they did that, that's when I jumped off the stage and was walking out of the ballroom, going out front, and I could still hear people were crying, and some people were still shouting and yelling, and it was really something, man.
So was he dead before they took him over to the hospital? I be very frank. They say that he was, and I don't know how to question it, but I know when I saw him on the stage, he was taking. How you could see that he was breathing, taking those deep. When someone is, I guess when you got something wrong and you're taking those deep, you could see that he was doing that, and I think when they got him off on the stretcher and taken him over, I think he was still alive. I mean, but brother, you saw him. You could see the bullet holes in his body, and I just was thinking to myself, he's going to die. He's going to die, because I just saw them. So there was a commotion after the shooting, because people were saying that the persons who fired the shots were going up. The trajectory? Could you ascertain from that from your vantage point?
I did because I did not see that. I was told that two guys. As I said before, the Audubon ballroom is huge. It's a huge ballroom, and I was told that two guys on the right-hand side of the ballroom stood up and, started a ruckus. Get your hand out of my pocket, something like that. And everybody was looking over there, including Brother Malcolm. And then the actual shooters, they were down in the front, and that's when they walked up. While the people, they started shooting. After the shooting started, because from what I understand, they ran out. And that's 5 people. And then one of the brothers in our organization had brought a pistol with him, and he was able to shoot this one guy in the leg, and so he got caught by the crowd, and they might have beaten him to death right there, but the cops came up and took him away. And by the way, when I was sitting in the back there waiting for to bring the pastor in, I looked into that office, the office I told you about. I saw at least 3 cops in there.
Uniformed NYPD, or were they plain clothes?
And they were in uniform. They were not in plain. I would not have known they were cops if they had been in plain clothes. They were in uniform, and they came in and they were just walking casually. After they took Brother Malcolm out, then I came out off the stage and was walking down the Audubon ballroom to go outside, and I saw these 3 cops. And they were just strolling around as though they were on a stroll in Central Park.
Well, let me ask you this, though. 15 away from the top there. Let me ask you this, Peter. Why was there no security check? Because, if you go to the mosque, and I've been to the mosque in Harlem, mosque number 7, you pat it down. Why wasn't that done for people when Malcolm spoke?
Because he was trying to get away from that. And he had told. See, I was not a part of security. I was told about what they were doing, but I was not a part of security. And they say that Brother Malcolm told them that, we're trying to get people to come to our meeting. We can't. If we do that, then that's going to keep people away. We're trying to get rid of that image of everybody being searched when they come in. And so they didn't do it. But I think the brothers who were in charge of security, they wanted to do it. But Brother Malcolm said no.
Well, let me ask you this question. 14 away from the top there. Prior to that, you mentioned his home was bombed out in Queens. Did he have any indication? Was he talking like he knew that the end was near?
I don't remember him talking like the end was near. He kept, telling us about what he was doing with the trip to Africa, his plans on going to the United Nations. But he didn't, at least to me, now people, some people may have said, who probably knew him better, longer and better than I did, may have said they noticed something. But to me, he just seemed the same. He seemed the same. He was, the way he was talking, the way he was when he asked me to come backstage about the what I had written. He talked just like he always talked. I showed him the article about the Deacons for Defense and Justice being put up in down, I think it was in Louisiana, and he said, "Oh, that's good. That's good. That's the type of self-defense that that we're talking about." And so now people who knew him that I later talked to told me that he did look like a little bit more concerned than he usually did. He seemed to have deliberately kept everybody off stage. You know what I mean? He didn't. They say that he said that usually when you had a speaker or someone was going to speak at our rally, they sat on the stage when he came out and we were going to introduce him. They sat out there, but he kind of. As I was told later by some of the brothers, he was trying to make sure that nobody else was on stage.
Was Betty Shabazz there? Where was she sitting?
She was there. She was sitting there, and she was sitting in what they had in the as I told you before, there's a huge ballroom, very, very long and also very wide, and on the side, on the right hand side, they had like booths. Rather than they had the rest of the time they had folding chairs they set up. They didn't want to have because people could go to rent that place to go to dancing and that kind of stuff. It was a place where people rented to hold parties and dancing, so they didn't want no chairs in the middle. So the booths are all on the side. And Sister Betty was sitting in one of the booths about halfway down, two-thirds way down, towards the bottom with the daughters.
Wow. Now, the brothers who started the diversion, Peter, did anybody identify them, or was it just so crazy, this chaotic after the shooting that they managed to get out as well?
They were those the 5 people who the 5 people who were picked up as they were included in the 5.
Okay. Were those the one who accused of those are the ones, some brothers from the nation from Jersey?
The 3 who did the shooting and the 2 who did the all 5 of them were picked up later.
But then, with those who were accused, were those the brothers from the mosque in Jersey that they tried to put this on?
That's what I think they were a part of it. I think that they were a part of that. I was like I said before, brother, I was not a part of the security and all that kind of stuff. And I deliberately stayed away from it because I knew nothing about it, and I did not want to have them questioning me about it. So I kind of made sure that I was not, I was with the newsletter, and that's what and dealing with that kind of stuff, because to me the security required people who really knew what they were doing, and I knew that was not my type of thing that I, knew very much about at all. And but I was told that the two guys who caused the disturbance were the guys from Jersey.
And I got to ask you this,
because nobody recognized.
Right? Did Brother Malcolm ever talk about COINTELPRO? Was he aware of that?
He never talked about COINTELPRO, but he certainly told us about the police and the things they were doing to harm black folks, and also about how they would recruit black folks to be spies for the police department. He talked about that kind of stuff to us, and he told us that. I never heard him talk about COINTELPRO, but of course he talked about the FBI and the things that they were doing, because they had followed him very closely when he was traveling, in Africa. People, Brother Malcolm, man, when he went to Africa, brother, he had meetings with some of the top leaders in Africa, ranging from 1.5 to 3 hours with Nkrumah of Ghana, Nyerere of Tanzania, Nasser of Egypt, Ezekwe of Nigeria, Kenny of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta from Kenya. I mean, he met these African leaders, man, and then they in turn invited him to the OAU meeting, which is going to be held in June 1964 in Cairo, and he went to that. He was not like an official, because these were the presidents of these organizations, of these countries, but he was invited to attend. He issued he gave them a statement advocating unity needed for black people of African descent around the world and everything, and he participated in that event. He was asked questions. And this was all part of his plan to take the United States government to the UN Commission on Human Rights, because at that time the United States had not signed the UN Charter on Human Rights, so nobody from this country could go take them there. You had to get somebody from a country who was a member of that. The United States was not a member. I don't know if they are to this day, because they didn't want us to be able to take it directly to the UN ourselves, so they never joined the UN. They had not signed or participated in the UN Charter on Human Rights.
And we're just about flat out of time, Peter. But have you written a book about this? Because this is important that the history that you just shared with us. I think it's important that our children know about this and what happened.
Okay, brother. Well, I put together a book which came out about 5 months ago. It's called Brother Malcolm's Strategic Pan-Africanism, an important subtitle, an important guide for people of African descent. And the book focuses solely on what he was doing internationally. The first section is all his documents, statements he made, newsletters, letters that he wrote, press releases that he wrote, a couple of excerpts of speeches that he gave talking about his Pan-Africanist philosophy. The second section of the book is the FBI files on what he was doing, because they were following him closely, because this is the height of the so-called Cold War with Russia at this time. And so the third section is the OAAU newsletter, which I was the editor. We were covering what he was doing. We got the newsletters contain articles.
And Peter, we just flat out of time. So is the book available yet?
Newsletters are in that section. Yes, it is available. There have been more available, but I got to get more. But anybody who want to find out when I'll have more can call me. And
Go ahead, real quick.
Can I give a landline number?
Sure. Go ahead, real quick.
202-291-4560. That's my landline. Leave a number where I can get back in touch with you to let you know when the next 5 books will be out.
All right. Thanks, Peter. Family, we're late. We got to run. Stay strong. Stay positive. Please stay healthy. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. Also in the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.